Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my fiancé is demanding I put her name on my house. She's still my fiancé right now, but the argument we're having is that once we're married, she wants her name on the house deed. Years ago, I bought several acres as soon as I could afford it. Back then, it was part of a ranch surrounded by other ranches. The owner needed money, so he parceled out this section and he sold it to me. I built a small house on it, and I've lived here ever since. Since it was originally part of a ranch, I did enough legally to keep it classified as a ranch, so the property tax is extremely low. Over the years, companies started to move to the neighboring big city and land prices really started going up. Almost all of the ranchers sold their lands to developers, so now there are huge houses surrounding mine. They start from $500,000 and they go to several million. None of them sit on even an acre of land. My house is clearly the worst house around, and I have no doubt it's bringing the value of the nearby houses down. That all happened before I met and even dated my fiancé. Now that we're engaged, we're talking seriously about our finances, and the only sticking point is the house. She wants her name on the deed once we're married because we'll be sharing our lives. Alternatively, she wants me to sell the house and we purchase a house together. I don't find either options attractive. In our state, whatever we bring to the marriage, we take out. Since I will be bringing the house into the marriage, I can leave with it should things not work out. If I put her name on it, then she'll get half. If I sell the house, there's no way I'll be able to afford anything that's even close to what I have now. Not to mention, our property tax will be several times higher. Then there's the drive time. My house is 30 minutes away from my work and 40 minutes from hers. House prices have gone up so much that we'll have to move at least an hour away from our jobs. Like I said, we agreed with or compromised on everything else. This one issue is the only sticking point, and it's becoming a big one. So much so that she brought her family into it. This weekend, her father took me out to dinner to have a man-to-man talk with me. He told me that if we're going to join our lives, we have to join everything. He expects me to do the right thing if I want to join their family. So now it's her entire family on one side and me by myself on the other. Am I wrong to want to keep the house I built by myself to myself? Edit. Neither of us are rich. I bought the land at a very low price, but now it's worth 10 times as much. Even if I offer to sell half of it to her at its current value, there's no way she can afford it. That's why if we buy a house together, we'll have to move far away from here and our jobs in order to get one we can both afford. In all, I spent about $200,000 to buy the land and build the house. Everything is paid off, and I pay the extremely low taxes every year. The tax assessment on my property is about $2 million. I don't know anything about refinancing, but at our salary level, I doubt we would qualify. In fact, we've spoken to a real estate agent, and with a 20% down, our salary qualifies us for a $300,000 house. The property tax on a $300,000 house is many times the current tax I pay now. I'm comfortable with us living in my house and paying all the taxes and maintenance by myself. Many are asking about my compromise and pointing out her lack of financial security. My compromise is that we live in my house and I'll pay for all of the taxes, bills, and maintenance. Based on our conversation with the real estate agent, if we buy a $300,000 house, her half of the mortgage would be about $1,300, not including her half of the property tax and down payment. I pointed out to her that if I pay for everything towards my current house, she would be saving at least $15,600 a year over the 30 years on the mortgage alone. That doesn't include the money she would be saving, not paying the down payment and property tax. In my mind, that would give her plenty of financial freedom and security. Also, if I sell the land, I don't want to buy any new house outright with that money. The reason we went to see a real estate agent is that if we buy a house together, I want it to be something we can both afford. Mortgage, down payment, taxes. I would put any money that I make off this sale into the retirement account. That's the main reason why I haven't sold my land despite many developers begging me to. Yes, some actually begged me. I view it as my retirement investment. You're not wrong, but neither is she. You have to find a compromise. That said, she made a huge mistake by bringing her family into it and having her father personally discuss the issue with you. She showed that she doesn't regard you as an equal partner and that she believes in bullying you into getting what she wants. The only acceptable solution here would be to consult a financial advisor for options and to discuss this between you two to find a solution. Her discussing this with her family was a mistake. Her father discussing this directly with you is a deal-breaker type of mistake. Neither she nor he seem to understand how much of a massive overstep that was. Would you think it's okay that your in-laws weigh in on your childbearing decisions? One thought with regard to a solution is to have a legal document drawn up that requires you to pay her half of the net value from month of marriage to month of transfer. She deserves something for living there as her home for 20 years if that's what happens. Since she didn't invest the money in the first place, I see your point of the current value solely being yours and not hers, but from the point of marriage on, she will be investing in the property. That makes it collectively both of yours. Have an appraisal done and you should be good to go. Bear in mind, I think you have a larger issue than just this property ownership. Not the jerk. The biggest red flag is how she's dealing with this. Instead of working out with you, she's going to her mommy and daddy and sending her flying monkeys to deal with it. This is how every issue is going to be dealt with. Every disagreement is going to be her whole family against you every time. I don't think any of them have your best interests or even your well-being at heart, and I have no doubt that if the roles were reversed, you'd be having dinner with her father explaining how you need to do the right thing and not expect half. Not saying break up with her, just pointing out serious red flags. The fact is, if she isn't planning on breaking up, she wouldn't need to demand half. She's planning for her future post-divorce life. You should do the same. Not the jerk. Your house is a premarital asset, protected as such. Hire a lawyer to draft a prenup. Do not put her name on the deed. She didn't contribute anything to it, and her dad has no business getting involved. Tell him that, using his own analogy, that you should be on their deed and bank accounts too. You'll regret it when she divorces you and takes half the value of your home. Well, what do you think? Should OP put his fiance's name on his house or not? Please let us know. It always amazes me how some people feel entitled to things that they didn't work for. It just makes me mad. Well, if they didn't exist, we wouldn't have half the stories we read, Karen. Final update. Am I the jerk for not accepting my sister's relationship with my ex despite her having cancer as a teen? I'm 25, female. My stepsister is 23. My father married her mother when I was 4 and she was 3. We've lived together most of our lives and we're a family. She and I were extremely close. She developed cancer when she was 14 and was sick for about 2 years. She's since made a full recovery. During that time, my parents became understandably overprotective. They also asked a lot of me. I quit my extracurriculars so I could get a job. The money went towards her medical bills, and so I could drive her to appointments. I didn't go to dances, and any fun activities I did needed to include her. I did almost all of this willingly, the exception being having to quit my high school volleyball team. I did throw a bit of a tantrum about that, but was swiftly punished. And I think having one emotional breakdown was pretty chill given the circumstances. Anyhow, I go to college and meet my ex, we'll call him Ben, when I'm a junior. We fall in love, blah blah blah. He and I move in together when we graduate, so we've been living together for about 3 years. We were serious until July, when I walked into my room and I saw him and her hooking up. I broke it off, tears were shed, he moved out, etc. My sister apologized at first, but then backed off. I thought she was giving me space, but last week she called and asked if we could meet up. She told me that she and Ben were in love and were just telling me as a courtesy before they started posting photos online. Distraught, I left her in the restaurant by herself and did not pay my portion of the bill. She later Venmo'd me asking for the money. She told my parents, who then called me to their house, telling me how disappointed in me they are for not supporting my sister's relationship with Ben. They brought up the fact that because she had cancer as a teen, she never learned proper social etiquette and has a hard time meeting people. I don't buy this. In part because I've seen her socialize just fine, and since we spent a good chunk of the time she was sick together, that would also mean that I should have bad social skills as well, by that logic. They then told me that if I don't accept my sister and Ben's relationship, they may have to go no contact with me. I reminded them that I'm also their daughter and they should understand my point of view, but they're adamant that this is about me being jealous of her. For the record, I'm not jealous of her. I'm not upset that Ben picked her over me. I'm sad about the end of the relationship and I do feel betrayed, but Lord knows that I don't want to be with a cheater. What I'm upset about is the fact that my sister chose Ben over me, that she hooked up with Ben knowing he and I were in a long-term committed relationship and continues to be with him knowing how much it hurts me. Now, no one in my immediate family is talking to me and I'm getting messages from aunts and uncles and cousins telling me that I'm a jerk and that I'm selfish. Update. I got in touch with my sister and asked her to meet up again at a park. No bill involved. I asked her if she was pregnant and she told me the truth. She said she wanted us to still be in each other's lives and that she wanted me to be in her baby's life. Someone on Reddit mentioned that she may ask me to be the godmother and that person was correct. But as many of you pointed out, if I didn't cut her off, I'd just become her bank and daycare employee. So I told her I could no longer be in her life, and I left her crying on a park bench, and I felt like the worst person in the world. I emailed my parents and told them how betrayed I felt and that I'd be cutting off contact with them. To my stepmom's credit, she apologized. She explained that she never thought my sister would live to have kids and that she let her emotions over that get the better of her. Understandable. My dad said nothing, which is honestly what sucked the worst about all of this. Ben tried messaging me from a burner account for the first time since the breakup, but I blocked him without reading it. I didn't go nuclear and post this story to Facebook as some suggested, but I sent an email to the extended family members who I care about. I explained the situation and how I'd be distancing myself from my family. Some have made it an us versus them situation, and as much as I appreciate the support, feeling like I'm in some valiant battle just makes me more tired. So I haven't been talking to much of anyone in my family. I feel lonely and crappy, but I think I made the right decision. Update. Since I found out about the pregnancy, he's tried to get in touch with me 6 times through email, text, and burner accounts. Has tried to get mutual friends to talk to me for him. Has showed up to my place once. The latter was the only time I humored him. He told me he was sorry, he loves me, he doesn't want to be with my stepsister, and he wants to get back together with me. I told him, tough. He made his bed, now he gets to lay in it with her. I haven't dated much since July because of my life's implosion, but in November, a friend from college messaged me out of the blue. We hadn't talked in a long time. He, 27, male, referred to as X2 for the rest of this post, and X1 were good friends, but had a falling out over something fantasy football related the year after we graduated, and I stopped talking to him out of solidarity or whatever. Anyhow, we go on a date, we click. We go on a few more dates. We become exclusive in early December. I was feeling really hopeful about this until this morning. I was supposed to meet X2 at a New Year's party last night. He got there before I left the house and texted me saying that X1 was at the party and asked whether I still wanted to come. I declined and went to another friend's house, and I have a pretty good time there. I tried calling X2 at midnight, but he didn't pick up. I didn't think much about it. Anyhow, I go to bed late, and when I wake up this morning, I have a message from X2 saying we're done. I couldn't even respond because he had blocked me everywhere. I talked to a friend who was at the party the exes were at last night, and he said the two of them had spent a good chunk of time chatting with each other, but he didn't know what they were talking about. I'm not close with anyone else who was at the party, so I don't really have anyone else to ask. It was just a 2-month relationship. I'm sad, but I'm okay. But the paranoid part of my mind is really concerned that X1 said something that resulted in X2 becoming X2. X2 has made it abundantly apparent that he doesn't want to talk to me again, and I don't want to push that boundary, but I'm so confused. I could contact X1, but I get the feeling that will open a floodgate of drama. I could also try talking to other mutual friends to see if they've heard anything, but I also don't really want to spread this as a rumor if it isn't true. I don't know, I'm at a loss. Any advice here? I'm spiraling, thinking that my ex is going to try to ruin every relationship I have for the rest of my life. Update. Turns out he met someone at the New Year's party and hooked up with her. Instead of telling me, he just blocked me everywhere and sent a lackey to message me a few weeks later with the real story and a weak apology. I want to be angry, and maybe part of me is, but as I'm sitting here, I'm just thinking, what if it's me? What if I'm just not lovable? What if it's never going to happen for me? Dad didn't approve of my career choice, so I got promoted and took his money. I've worked for the same restaurant chain since I was legally allowed to work at 16. At first, it was just a part-time job to make money while in high school. At 18, I ended up transferring to a location a few hours away where I was going to college, and I got promoted to supervisor. After a semester, I ended up dropping out of school due to the effects it was having on my mental health. I've never been very motivated by money, just want to pay my bills and have a simple life with good friends and family nearby. So I decided to stick with this company and continue to work my way up until I could manage my own location. Ever since I dropped out of college though, my dad took every opportunity to try and persuade me to do something more serious with my life. He's always been very motivated by money, so it's hard for him to understand why I don't feel the same way. Which I could understand to some extent, but after 2 years of every single conversation with my dad ending in an argument over my career choice, it had heavily impacted our relationship. It's very demanding being constantly reminded that you're wasting your life or not being responsible, even though I was in my own apartment with my own car at just 18 years old. We didn't have a healthy relationship to begin with, so this added disagreement just made me even more resentful. So one day I finally had the opportunity to move out of state where a lot of my extended family lived, along with being promoted to assistant manager at this new location. When I told my dad this, he begged me to look for another job. He said he was embarrassed by my profession and wished he could post about my accomplishments like my siblings. He ended up offering me $2,000 if I found a job that would pay me $14 an hour or more. Generous, yes, but I'd rather have a dad who supports me, or at least doesn't belittle me, you know? Anyway, I texted the manager I had been in contact with about my transfer to ask if we could discuss my pay. I convinced her to increase the offer from $13.75 to $14.25. I told my dad I had gotten an offer for more than $14 and asked for the $2,000 as it was time for me to put down my deposit and first month's rent for my new apartment. He said he would eventually, but that technically he never clarified when he would pay me. He had plenty of money, but was always stingy with it. I told him I'd just ask my grandma for a loan since he wasn't following through, and I'd use his money to pay her back eventually. Of course, he didn't want our family to know that he was being a jerk, so he sent me the money. Afterwards, he asked me about my new job, to which I said, "I'm not getting a new job, I'm just getting a raise." I could hear the steam coming out of his ears over the phone. He started yelling and demanding I send back the money, but I told him, "Well, you're right, you never clarified when you'd have to pay up, but you also never clarified that the wage I needed had to come from a different job." I hung up and kept the money. We didn't talk for a while and still hardly talk now. Edit. A lot of you seem very concerned about the wage, which I understand as I didn't clarify when or where this took place. This was about 8 years ago, and for the area, $14.25 for assistant manager was a decent wage. Not great, but paid my bills and allowed me to save as well. As for my current profession, I took a temporary leave of absence to help my mom care for my stepdad, who's currently in physical rehabilitation. I'll be returning to work in October, and don't worry, I'm a manager now, and I make about twice as much as I did as assistant manager 8 years ago. Might not feel like success to others, but my bills are paid. I have a good savings account, and I've met some of my best friends at this job, so I'm happy. Lastly, as I stated in one of my comments, my dad was neglectful when I was growing up, so no, I do not regret taking his money and damaging our relationship, as it was already beyond recovery for me. Edit 2. I should have worded the grandma part differently. To clarify, I planned on moving to be near my extended family before my dad even offered me the deal. I had the money for the deposit and rent. When I said I reached out because it was time for me to pay the deposit, I only meant that's what initiated the phone call. Obviously, I'd rather use the $2,000 than my own savings. I wasn't actually going to ask my grandma for a loan because I didn't need to. I only said that because I knew my dad didn't want his mom to know he went back on his word, and I was right. Now, for everyone assuming my dad paid for my expenses, I worked under the table job since I was in middle school because I was responsible for purchasing all of my food, clothes, and hygiene products. He provided a roof over my head, and that's about it. The only money he has ever given me is that $2,000, which he tried to refuse to give me even before he knew I was keeping the same job. It's all about control, and anyone else with a narcissistic parent will understand. My main takeaway is that pay is way too low. Having to ask to get over $14 an hour as an assistant manager? That's a sorry state. I'm sorry your dad's a jerk. He should have been proud of you for pulling that off on him. Man, OP, you suck. I'll probably get downvoted into oblivion, but here goes. Your entire post is centered on yourself. You display no humility or awareness of others, and you are boastful about several things that make me cringe. You say your relationship wasn't healthy to begin with, but that's pretty standard when you're a teenager. You call him belittling without any supporting events to back it up, and you try to paint him as unsupportive for wanting you to get a different job, even going so far as to financially incentivize it with a cash bonus if you get a job that increases your hourly pay. You talk about dropping out of college because of the effects on your mental health. Like what? Stress? You think it gets easier away from school? Not saying that college is the right decision for you, but dropping out is the first in a line of several short-sighted and immature decisions you admit to. You seem proud of having your own place and your own car at 18. While those are responsibilities, having them does not make you responsible. If your car is on a lease and you can barely afford your apartment, that wouldn't be a responsible circumstance. If you owned both and spent all your free time partying or playing video games or posting on Reddit, still not responsible. You say you aren't financially motivated like him, which probably is something you feel proud about. However, you were financially motivated enough by a $2,000 bonus to do something about it. So if it hasn't occurred to you, you're actually wrong about your not like him belief. You negotiated a raise from your boss to get that bonus. I hope you're aware that raise comes out to $20 more per week, and that's before taxes. Assuming a typical tax situation, you conned your dad and mistreated that relationship for about $16 a week. Congrats, you get a supersized meal deal at a fast food place for dinner one extra time. You suggested and threatened to go to your grandma for a loan. Leaving aside the fact that you needed financial help, because $14.25 an hour ain't exactly responsible and independent money, you were going to use a grandparent's generosity. And even if that was only a tactic, you were manipulating your dad into giving you money. What a selfish and petulant choice. You say he has plenty of money, but was always stingy with it. Guess what? Your description of him makes it seem like he works for it, not you. Your sense of entitlement is bonkers. It's disgusting. Am I the jerk for calling my daughter a private school snob? My daughter, Ella, who's 26, is a doctor. She works very hard and is very talented. She spent most of her life with her mother, but took up a position at a hospital near me, and so she moved in with me. She doesn't own a car at the moment, but I've insured her to drive mine so she can use it to get to work. Ella worked a lot of continuous 12-hour shifts and finally got a day off today. She's pretty exhausted, but had an errand to run. She ordered a new pair of designer trainers, but neither of us were at home when they arrived, so they were left at a delivery center nearby for her to collect. There's a bus stop about 5 minutes walk from my house, and that bus stops right outside the delivery center. It's about a 20-minute journey. Ella asked if she could borrow the car to pick up the shoes. I said no. I only use the car to get to work, if I'm carrying a lot of things. I don't use the car for anywhere that's walking distance or a short journey on public transport. Ella got upset and argued that she's been on her feet all day for several days and is too tired. She then said that she's not the sort of person who uses public transport. Her mother and their family are extremely well off. Ella went to a very prestigious private school. Unfortunately, they also have certain attitudes towards people not as fortunate, one of which is that public transport is used by unsuccessful people. When she said that about not being the sort of person who uses it, I said that she needs to get that snooby private school attitude out of her head if she wants to get anywhere in life. She lost it on me and stormed off, but did end up going on the bus to get the shoes. While she was gone, Ella's mother called me, shouting at me for making our daughter's life difficult and accusing me of trying to hold her back, etc. She said I should show that I care, that she's worked so hard at the hospital. I accept that I shouldn't have said the private school comment, but Ella isn't so tired she can't brave a 5-minute walk to the bus stop. I don't want her to be reliant on the car when there are other ways to get where she needs to go. Am I the jerk? Everyone sucks here. Her for the not the sort of person who uses public transport comment, and you for not allowing her to take the car after a 12-hour shift. Is it an environmental thing or a cost thing with you? Calling 50-50 on this one, because given someone just worked a 12-hour shift at a hospital helping others, you don't really get to dictate how tired they are and justify it off your personal metric of tiredness. If someone said they just finished 12 hours at a hospital, I'd be more inclined to just make their life easier. You're the jerk. That's an awful way to speak to your own kid. You're pretty clear that you blame her mother for these attitudes, but you didn't bother doing much about bringing her up properly yourself with a better attitude to less wealthy people, so, you know. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. Dude, just let her use the car, bro. Like, what are cars for? My new Karen neighbor is demanding I cut down plants in my yard. A family that has kids recently moved into the house next door. The border between our yards, mostly on my side, has a ton of poison ivy. I'm extremely sensitive to it, so I haven't tried to control it, except when it starts to grow too much into my yard. Even when I do remove it, I have to suit up and wash everything thoroughly, and I still somehow end up with a rash. One of the parents came to my door last week to ask me to remove the poison ivy because their kids have been getting rashes when they play in that part of the yard. I said that I couldn't do that because of my sensitivity, but that they could just get it removed on their side, and as long as their kids stayed in their own yard, it wouldn't be an issue. They said that even if they did that, it would grow back into their yard from my side, and that I could pay a company to remove it if I wouldn't do it myself. I said that I would only agree to it if they paid for all of it. They refused and said that they would be looking into local laws about nuisance plants. We're not on speaking terms anymore. Am I really the jerk here? It's their problem, so why should I have to pay for it? They could just teach their kids to avoid poison ivy like I do. I could understand if I had planted it intentionally, But poison ivy is a native plant that was here before I was, and it's an important food source for bees and birds. Quite frankly, I'm grateful for it because it's been keeping their loud kids away from my yard who were really annoying me whenever I was out in my garden. It sounds like the poison ivy border between your properties is a nuisance to both you and your neighbors, and you are all making the situation needlessly complicated. Why not just hire a company to remove the plant and then split the cost? Edit. Oh, I see that the real reason you're letting this poisonous plant continue to grow and encroach on your neighbor's property is so that their kids will not be able to play in that section of their own yard. You are intentionally keeping a poisonous plant around that's harmful to both you and your neighbors so that they can't access that part of their property. How completely selfish. You're the jerk. Info. Why aren't you two just paying half each? It's clearly a nuisance to both of you. I'm a little bothered on OP's behalf that the parent's response was to put the financial responsibility on OP. The verbiage used in the post, at least, comes across that the parent has deemed OP responsible for the removal, whether it's professional or not. If OP doesn't care about it and appreciates it as both a contributor to the ecosystem and as a natural fence line, then it seems more reasonable for the parents to remove it on their side and put up either a competing bush or a hedge plant, or put in garden edging of some kind, or even a proper fence. A lot of people are crying, "Think of the kids," but that's really a point of education. Don't play near potentially harmful areas. There isn't going to be an easy answer to everything in life, nor is everyone going to be willing to compromise. Additionally, if a kid is allergic to pollen or a particular tree, there's no exception that the neighborhood has to accommodate that. Trees are not poison ivy, but it's a loose connection given plants are the primary topic. As far as looking into nuisance laws for plants, my unprofessional assumption is that if OP isn't cultivating the plant and it's not an invasive species, it probably won't hold much weight as an argument. Then again, tree law is nuts, so I could be very incorrect there. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know. Roundup makes a special product just for poison ivy. It works like a charm. Spray the whole area and it'll be gone in a week. Am I the jerk for making my chronically late friend miss her seminar? My friend, 25 female, is constantly late for everything. Be it work-related or fun activities, she will always be at least 15 to 20 minutes late. She doesn't have a car, and so oftentimes I, 25 male, will have to pick her up from her house. I work at a university, and she's a PhD student there, and her place is along the way from me. Last time I offered her a ride to work, she ended up being 20 minutes late after I've already arrived at her place. Because of that, I ended up being late for work. She's always very apologetic about her lateness, but never changes. This week, she was supposed to give a seminar at the university, which is a crucial part of her PhD program. She asked me if I could give her a ride to work that day. I told her sure, but that I was picking her up at 8 a.m. and she must be there at exactly 8 a.m. and not a minute later. She chuckled, but I told her I wasn't joking, and she promised that she would be there. The morning of her seminar, I drove to her place and I got there at 7:55 and texted her that I was here, and she told me that she would be out in just a minute. At 8 o'clock, there was no indication that she would come out, and she didn't text anything. So at 8:01, I drove off. At around 8:20, she called me asking where I was. I told her I was at work and that I wasn't joking when I told her that she had to be ready right that minute. She started screaming and crying over the phone and told me that she was having a hard time that morning, couldn't be ready right at 8 a.m. She then begged me to come back to pick her up, as her seminar is at 9 a.m. and she needed to be at the school before then. I could have done it quick enough to pick her up and drop her off without affecting my work, but I decided I didn't want to do that, and I told her that I wouldn't. She was crying and hyperventilating at that point and said she had promised to never be late for anything else again, and re-emphasized that this seminar was crucial for her PhD and that she absolutely cannot miss it without severe consequence. I responded, "Oh well," and hung up. I then went about my day at work normally. I feel like I could have went back and picked her up in this scenario since it wouldn't have been detrimental to me, and at the same time, this was something very important for her. On the other hand, I feel like this should be a wake-up call for her chronic lateness. Not the jerk. You warned her. She also had 40 minutes to make other arrangements, even after all her procrastination. Could you have been kinder? Yes. Could you have reminded her about your time restrictions? Yes. Could you have given her a final notice with an "I'm going to drive away at 8 o'clock? Yes. Is it rude to be continually late? Yes. Is she an adult? Yes. Is it your problem to manage her time? No. still not the jerk. When you said you left at 8:01, I was thinking you were the jerk. But when she didn't call you until 8:20, I laughed and thought, oh no, definitely not the jerk. Your friend needs to learn that punctuality in the professional world is important. Also, her chronic lateness should not be affecting you getting to work on time. Not the jerk. I had a friend like this. I was left at the movies, restaurants, train stations. She was never ever on time, always apologetic, etc. Finally, I just started leaving after 15 minutes, which even that seemed a long time when you're waiting at a restaurant. I was also told after I left the first time, I'll never be late again, I promise. But she was. And then the friendship faded away, which was okay by me. My stomach was always in knots, and I was always frustrated and angry by the time she showed up that I finally realized I wasn't enjoying myself. Clearly, your friend showed up at 8:20 and expected you to idly wait for her like her chauffeur. It's so disrespectful of your time. Frankly, I'd be okay with not having this friend. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their friend? Please let us know. I don't mind at all when people show up late. It shows me that our time together is not important to them and I don't need to keep them in my life. You want me to coerce an inspector after someone else did the work? This happened years ago. I had just started working as an independent electrician, and one day I received a call from a new customer. He was one of those people that flips homes in lower income neighborhoods. I'll call him Todd, but honestly, I've forgotten what his name is. Todd asked me to meet him at a vacant house he recently bought to give him an estimate for a full rewiring job. He was 30 minutes late, so I was already unimpressed with him. Upon entering the house, which was right after a rainstorm had passed through, we found an inch of water covering the hardwood floors. There was water pouring out of small holes in the column on the front porch. Everything was soaked. Instead of showing me around, Todd called his business partner and brother and spent the next 20 minutes going off on him for not fixing the roof. I'm standing around and listening to his man-baby rage on full display. The whole time I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to work for this guy. His fuse was way too short and his anger was out of hand. I gave him a price, which admittedly was the I don't want to do this job price, and didn't hear back from him until months later. Todd called me later that year. He explained that he had found an electrician from 3 states away and had paid the electrician with ceramic tiles instead of cash. The problem now? Well, he needed an inspection from the city electrical inspector. I agreed to meet with the inspector for him, which I would bill him for. I went back to the house about 20 minutes before the inspector showed up and saw numerous issues. When the inspector arrived, we walked through together. Every issue I saw, the inspector also saw. He pointed them out, and every time I agreed with him that the work was not up to code. This inspector kept looking at me with a puzzled expression. After we did a complete walkthrough, I finally explained to the inspector that I didn't do any of the work and was hired to get him to pass the inspection. He asked me if I thought he should, and I told him absolutely not. I got paid for my time, I got paid to repair all the violations, and I formed a strong relationship with that inspector, who was always lenient with me on all of my future jobs. Karen demands I charge my son rent to live in a house that he partially owns. My oldest son, who's 24, is not my wife's biological kid. He was my son with my late wife. My late wife and I bought a 3-bedroom house when we got married. When I remarried, my current wife moved into this house with me, but I never put her name on the deed. The house was only in my name. My wife and I ended up having several kids and needing to move into a bigger house. When we bought our new home, she wanted me to sell the old one. I said no, that this home was something my late wife and I purchased with the hope of one day passing on to our son. I would make it a rental property instead. That was one of the biggest fights we had ever had. She insisted we make a compromise, but I refused to do so. When my son graduated from college, I put his name on the deed to the house with mine, which was another fight, but I felt he was the appropriate inheritor to his mother's share. I didn't share any of the rental income with him though, as I was still paying all of the taxes and insurance. At this point, the mortgage is paid off. I net over $2,000 a month from this house, which goes into the household budget. My son just got engaged and he wants to move into the house after he marries his fiancée. He suggested he pay half of the rent and eventually buy out my share of the house. I told my son I agreed to his plan of saving up to buy out my share, but instead of paying rent, he should just take over the taxes and insurance. We agreed to this. My wife is livid and says that I'm a massive jerk for dramatically decreasing our household income without consulting her. She likened my decision to financial mistreatment. I suggested we downsize to a smaller house now that our oldest two kids are leaving the nest, and we could rent out the larger one and be in the same situation as before, owning two homes and getting rental income on one. She called me a selfish jerk and won't even speak to me now. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Why even get married if you refuse to take anything that your wife says seriously? Maybe try treating her like an actual human and take what she has to say into consideration. There's no telling how many years this woman has been allowing you to be her husband, sharing her life with you, building a family with you, and even at this point, after all these years, you still flat out disregard what she has to say because you side with your daddy's boy. If she had known you would go on to pick your nepotism baby over her, I doubt she would have wasted her life with you. I hope she leaves you and is They always say that. I hope she leaves you and is able to get her fair share, which involves you selling that house and splitting the profits with her, not with your daddy's boy who wants to live in daddy's house for the rest of his life. Your wife deserves so much better. My brother married the mother of his daughter's bully and moved them into his house. My brother, 39 male, has a daughter, Piper, who's 15. When Piper was 4, her mom passed. My brother told Piper so much about her, and they had some special photos of her mom that were treasured. When Piper was 6, she started being teased by this girl called Nancy, who's now 15. It continued on for over a year and ultimately came to a head when Nancy tore up a photo of Piper's mom that Piper brought into school for some show-and-tell family edition her class was doing. From that day on, Piper did not like Nancy. Because of that incident, my brother and Nancy's mom met. They became friends, and a few months after the incident, where Nancy tore up the photo, they started dating, and they married a year later. Piper pulled away from my brother when she found out he was dating Nancy's mom, and even more when they moved in together and got married. Nancy was actually happy and tried to get close to Piper, but Piper wanted nothing to do with that. Nancy's mom mentioned how being sisters would mend the rift, and I thought that was kind of crazy given what went down. My brother only mentioned to me recently that he really thought Piper and Nancy would be sisters and would be close by now. But Piper doesn't want anything to do with Nancy still and doesn't trust her around anything important. I told my brother that's because he moved too fast to get that kind of relationship with them. I said he and his wife started dating and Nancy hadn't even apologized, and then Piper was still upset about who he was dating and Nancy being in her life more when they got married. I told him at no point did he try to make what happened better for Piper. He thought his marriage license would somehow erase the hurt Piper felt and the bullying Nancy put Piper through for more than a year. I said maybe if he had given it time, let Nancy apologize, and given the girls space where they weren't living together to interact outside of school, things could have been different. But you had one kid who was hurt and angry, and another who was eager to have a dad and a sibling after only having her mom. My brother said I expected him to let Piper dictate his life. I said no, not what I said. I said if he wanted Piper to be happy and embrace Nancy as a sibling, then he should have taken things more slowly to get that outcome. He told me it was none of my business and I was overstepping and I'm just his little sister. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your brother sucks and he needed to hear it. Being sisters will mend the rift is the kind of BS rationalization people make when they don't want to face how disgusting it is that they're bringing Piper's bully into her home, into her family. My brother said I expected him to let Piper dictate his life? Ugh, yeah, God forbid a parent be expected to prioritize their kid's well-being or anything. What your brother needs to realize is that, sure, he can refuse to care about his teenage daughter, but Piper is fast approaching the age of adulthood when he can no longer dictate her life. I think he'll be in for a rude awakening when his daughter drops him just as coldly as he's dropped her. Not the jerk. He shoved aside his daughter's feelings for his own personal happiness. I think it's incredibly gross he even started being friends with the parent of his daughter's bully, much less dating and then marrying her. Did they tell this lovely story of how they met at their wedding? He's probably permanently damaged his relationship with his daughter. And your brother is the one who brought it up. You didn't just say it out of nowhere. If it wasn't your business, then maybe he shouldn't have been talking about it with you. He's just mad you called him out on his BS. This is gonna come full circle when Piper goes no contact once she's old enough to leave home. People don't magically embrace their unapologetic bullies because their parents decided to shack up and force them into a sibling relationship. This whole dynamic is probably a nightmare come true for Piper. You are right on all fronts, but there's very little he can do now to mend the situation, which he massively fumbled. so I understand why he would rather play dumb. Not the jerk. Nobody is the jerk in this situation. Your brother was hurting and found love. He found it, good for him, but he didn't do a good job handling the situation with his daughter. That doesn't make him a jerk. Parents aren't perfect. Things can be handled in better ways, and as long as you learn from mistakes or are willing to evolve as a parent, it's okay. No jerks here. Not that your brother would take your advice now, but he and Piper should be in family therapy together so that Piper can communicate her feelings to her dad in a safe space. At the very least, Piper should be in therapy so she can process her feelings about losing her mom at such a young age. That's the biggest elephant in the room in my opinion, since it doesn't sound like Piper's dad tells her stories about her mom much anymore. Heavy metal finance. Quite a few years ago, in the late 1990s and very early on in my career, I used to work for a company that helped customers of certain retail stores manage their finances. My role was as a sort of compliance officer, ensuring that the staff who dealt with customers were following the rules. If they messed it up, it was a big problem and could potentially impact the customer's credit score, result in them defaulting on payments, and even end up in court. I took my job pretty seriously. The company was not particularly well run from a management perspective. They had made a lot of money very quickly and had grown from a handful of people in a garage to a 4-story office building within the space of a year and a half. There wasn't a great deal in the way of policy or process framework, so I had to develop a lot of the tools to do my job myself. This involved some programming, a basic system to track what I was doing, linked to the extensive rule set, and automate some of the more tedious reporting. It would also track how long I was spending on each task so that I could see about which elements I could streamline. Now, I was quite proud of this system and called it Hendrix, as I'm a massive Jimi Hendrix fan, and it used to play about 5 seconds of the instrumental version of Little Wing when it started up. As I had my own little room, cupboard, this never used to annoy anyone. I can geek out about that kind of stuff. At this point, before corporate IT became rather more rigid, I used to write a lot of my own tools. I was the only person who was using Hendrix, and it was a tool just for me. My manager, the archetype middle manager, decided that because it allowed you to quickly reference which rules applied to which situation, it should be rolled out to all staff. Now, I had previously considered this, but I argued that I couldn't guarantee that it would be fit for task because I had designed it for my own use, and I'd need to make some changes first. But he rolled it out anyway, without me even getting a chance to tweak it. He got a Team Player of the Week award for introducing a tool to make life easier for frontline staff. In his acceptance speech, that was a big rah-rah thing each week for the company, he thanked his manager. I didn't even get a mention. Then, 2 weeks later, he realized that I'd been recording how long I had been working on a certain task within the program. Now, I'd realized fairly quickly that this part of the program was a little too detailed, and I didn't really care too much about every single task within each incident. So I just used it to record how long I spent on the entire incident, rather than each part of the incident. My manager invited me to a meeting about Hendrix, no details given, and I attended thinking it was going to be a list of requested features, only to find out that the head of HR was there and I was being given a written warning for falsifying timekeeping. Because each customer interaction was a certain length, my manager had decided that this was what I should be recording, and not how long I was spending listening to, analyzing, checking, and reporting on the interaction. Remember, this is a tool that I had designed for my own use, and it was not being used to calculate how much I was being paid, or whether I was doing enough work during the day or not. There was nothing in place for that at all. I had not made the records public. He had found them in a file on the server that only he and I had access to. Nobody else was supposed to even have this tool. I argued this and was told that it wasn't up to me, and I was getting a warning regardless. It got quite heated and unpleasant, though I got the impression that the head of HR was a little embarrassed about the whole thing. They said, however, that if I wanted to consult a lawyer, I was quite within my rights to do so. It was at this point that I was rather smugly able to state that I could get 2 lawyers there within the hour, as both my parents were practicing, and my mother was, in point of fact, an employment lawyer. Suddenly, there was a completely different attitude from my manager. There was an attempt to roll back the issue and turn it into a suggestion that perhaps I should be a bit more careful with my timekeeping in the future, but I was pretty angry at this point. I pointed out that my software had been rolled out to all staff against my wishes. I was told that this wasn't up to me, as it was company intellectual property, until I advised them that I'd written it in my own time, at home on my own computer. It was plugging into the office government rule set and not the corporate intranet one. I had not confirmed it fit for general release at all. I had received special dispensation from IT to install it on a single work computer, mine, and I would require them to pay a license fee for anything beyond this. To be fair, this would have been tied up in court for a long time, and I've got no idea whether I'd have been successful. So in the end, I relented. If they wanted to use Hendrix, well, I guess they could. I just made sure that Little Wing would play for 1 second longer on startup for every week the software was in use. Then I quit the following Monday and was working for another company by the Monday after that. 3 or 4 months later, I got a phone call from my former manager asking me to come fix the problems with my software. He hung up when I quoted him my consultant fees. I don't know why IT wasn't able to figure it out. It was just a setting in a text file, not all that hard to find. A friend who remained in the company tells me they continued to use Hendrix for a whole year. The mornings in the call center were apparently horrifying, with Little Wing playing for around a minute every time someone started a new shift. Sometimes it would play on 20 computers at once, a few seconds apart, on tiny PC speakers that were unable, due to IT, to mute. My son asked out a girl as a prank. I have 3 kids. Oldest is at university, so it's just me, my wife, and them, who are 16 and 11. All my kids are kids who have been raised very well, and they've grown to be people I'm proud to call my own. My son recently had some friends over, and things were going fine. I went upstairs at one point to bring them the pizza they had ordered when I overheard my son talking about how his friends owed him something for asking a girl in their class out as a prank. From what I gathered, the girl was someone his friends didn't deem attractive enough and a load of other BS. I decided to talk to my son about it after his friends left to save him from embarrassment. I did raise my voice a bit, but that was due to how maddening the whole situation was. The same thing had happened to my cousin when we were younger, and I saw how the whole thing affected her as she took on new relationships. My son argued back that it was just a prank that wouldn't hurt anyone and that I was going against him by listening to his friends' private conversations, and said that while he felt sorry for my cousin, he was mature enough to understand to not pull the prank any further. I didn't listen to any other excuses he gave and decided to ground him for 2 weeks. He said that I shouldn't have any say in this when the whole thing had nothing to do with me. My wife claims that boys will be boys and that it's something harmless. When I asked her how she'd feel if this was played on our daughter, she simply said, "That won't happen because she has good genes." Mother-in-law and father-in-law are blowing up the family group chat about how I'm hurting their baby for normal teenage boy behavior. So, am I the jerk? If I'm being too nosy about an act that has nothing to do with me, I'll take back my son's grounding. Not the jerk. Your son is a bully. Your wife sounds like a piece of work. Agreed. As someone who was asked out as a prank and still has scars from it 20 years later, not the jerk. OP, this is not a harmless joke. I guarantee the girl that he was talking about won't find it funny. Please don't back down. My best friend pulled a prank like that on me in 4th grade. 50 plus years later, I still hate her guts for it. It ruined my dating years because my self-confidence was destroyed at 9 years old. This happened to me in 5th grade, and I found out in high school it was a whole joke at the other middle school that a geek like me thought someone as cool as Matt would date me. I used it as a teaching tool when I taught middle school, but I still think about how horrible that was to do to someone. Same happened to me in 9th grade. It took me a very long time to trust again, and it damaged my self-confidence for even longer. This isn't a harmless prank, and it does hurt people. Frankly, I think 2 weeks grounding is the least of the kid's worries if he can't see how this could really hurt someone after what OP said. Wow, can't believe how many of y'all got asked out as a prank. No wonder y'all spend all your time on Reddit. That also explains why y'all have such twisted views of relationships and why y'all can't stand dudes. Look, I'm sorry y'all had these bad experiences as kids, but you need to move on and just go on with your life. I had bad experiences too when I was a kid. Nothing to rival y'all getting asked out as a literal prank, but I had my fair share of misfortune. One time I took my Pokemon card collection to school, and during lunch, someone stole the whole folder from my backpack. It was the hardest loss I've ever taken, and I still think about it to this day. But I don't let it control my life. I would have much preferred to be asked out as a prank than to lose my entire collection of Pokemon cards, which included my first edition holographic Charizard, which is now worth thousands of dollars. And y'all think you had it bad. Dude sounds like a jerk, but I do think we should drop Fs in the chat for that holographic Charizard. Bizarre safety procedures at work cause a hilarious Cobra effect. I'm a senior electrical engineer in the industrial sector. I started work at a huge firm a few weeks ago, and right off, my superior detailed what was expected of me every quarter. Among the requirements were one safety violation report a month. I thought, okay, I could keep myself from messing up more than once a month. This is a large factory with everything from spinning grinders to steaming corrosives, so obviously OSHA is a big issue here. But this isn't my first rodeo, so to speak. I generally know what I'm doing. So my first month goes by, and I keep everything nice and safe. End of month, one-on-one rolls around. Boss makes it clear, to my surprise, that the requirement is for me to file at least one safety violation a month. Obviously, I inquired how one could go about controlling safety violations, as they are inherently accidents, and if I had any way to influence their appearance, I would prevent them in the first place. But he just said I need to keep my eyes open, the violations will appear. Fine, I kept my eyes open, but honestly, everything seemed perfectly in order. Everyone else in my department were ticking off safety violations one after another, and I was nearing the end of month 2 with nothing. I would go on walks looking for safety infringements instead of working. Something seemed off, so I looked into the safety violations report Excel, and I was just stupefied. This was a list of the most unbelievably inane infractions I've ever set my eyes upon. I'll give you some examples. Infraction: cabinet door was left open in room. Someone could hit their head. Immediate mitigation: cabinet door closed. Future mitigation: add magnets to cabinet doors. There were countless other esoteric reports like unexplained puddle next to electrical cabinet or stack of cables on floor. I couldn't believe it. These well-educated grown men and women just writing nonsensical safety violations on absolutely anything. I tried approaching one of the guys about it, but he just said to keep my eyes open. The violations will appear. They kept repeating it like it's a mantra, then changed the subject. I thought this was ridiculous enough, but then one day a report came in about a ladder missing one of the plastic caps on its legs. Immediate mitigation: plastic cap found elsewhere and secured in its place. Now, I was the last one to use this ladder the day before, and it was perfectly fine, which led me to my conclusion that this man was purposely sabotaging company equipment just so he can fix it and then write his safety violation report. I feel like I'm in an episode of The Office. Everyone I approach about this just brushes it off, maybe because I'm the new guy. Anyway, I couldn't show up to my second monthly evaluation sans safety report, so I went to a random grounding cable, slightly unfastened the bolt, took a picture, and then fastened it back in place. I wrote a report about it, and the OSHA guy commended me in person about my vigilance. Is this a department-wide grift? Are the managers unaware of this farce, or are they just playing along? Usually, this would be a huge red flag, but everyone is otherwise really nice, and the pay is great. Anyway, ideas as to what I should sabotage next month are welcome. My brother chose a dog over me. I'm 28, female. My brother, who's 26, was my best friend growing up. He didn't feel the same way. I was a lot more awkward as a kid, so I often just followed his friend group around, even though many of them bullied me. He never stood up for me, but when we were alone, he went back to being fun and nice, so I always forgave him. When we were teenagers and got part-time jobs, I started buying him birthday and Christmas presents, even though he never did the same for me. Our parents said it was because he's younger and would eventually, but to this day, I have never received a gift from him personally. Now that we're adults, I call and text him occasionally to check in, and though he's nice when he responds, he doesn't initiate. I figured that was just how he is. I always put more work in, but he's my brother and I love him. I'm graduating from graduate school soon, and I invited my whole family out to celebrate. Everyone got a plane ticket and hotel room I'm paying for, and it's been planned out for months. The other day, my brother called me to say that he was picking up a new puppy the day before my graduation and that he couldn't make it. Something inside me broke a little. I asked if it really had to be that day, if he couldn't postpone it for a week or something, but he said no dice and to cancel his reservations. I said okay and I hung up. I decided I was done being in a one-way relationship with him, even though I always thought of him as my best friend. Later, I was talking to our mom, and she was saying how excited she is to see us, and I told her, "Oh, brother's not coming. He chose a dog over me." She asked what I was talking about, and I explained. She said she was disappointed but not surprised. Word got out, and my brother called me, really hushed and sad, and said that what I'd said wasn't cool. I said I just told the truth. He called me a jerk, and we haven't spoken since. I said what I said in anger and bitterness, But now I'm really feeling guilty because I've always forgiven my brother and I've never heard him sound the way he did on the phone. Am I the jerk? Edit, because I guess I didn't share some things properly. I didn't invite myself to parties or social events my brother got invited to with his friends. When I said I followed around his friend group, I meant sit near them on the school bus or during assemblies. My brother has a social life outside of me, which I was not invited to, nor forced myself into. I did not insert myself into his friend groups, just that when they were group functions, I would hover near them as opposed to being in a corner. When we were alone, we acted very friendly with each other and we would hang out regularly, like playing video games together. He did agree to go to my graduation before I bought the hotel and plane tickets. I did not assume he would attend. If he didn't want you telling people he backed out of your graduation festivities to get a dog, he shouldn't have backed out of your graduation festivities to get a dog. Not the jerk, obviously. Not the jerk. He's upset, not because he hurt your feelings, but because he knows you recognize the imbalance in your relationship. He's also upset because other people now see how he treated you or now publicly acknowledge it. I'm not saying the following statement to be mean. I'm saying it so you can see how obvious it is to a Reddit random who has never met you or any of your family members. Your brother is self-centered and absolutely puts his own interests above you. Even your mother acknowledges this when you told her that he was not attending because he's picking up a puppy. She said she was disappointed but not surprised. I'm sorry. I can imagine being on the outs with your brother hurts a lot. This is a big step in claiming the respect you deserve, and I hope you realize that and stand your ground. You've done nothing to feel guilty about. I get that you still do feel guilty, but this outside observer absolves you of any unwarranted guilt. Honestly, I think everyone sucks here. You for being the clingy older sister that never took a hint growing up, and it took you until you were almost 30. Your parents for not noticing this and intervening when you guys were kids. Your brother for being passive the whole time and not being direct with you to give him space. Seems like a lot of unspoken emotions. Clingy older sister that never took the hint? Wow, just wow. For doing creepy stalker things, like buying her own sibling Christmas presents, I guess? No, like calling your sibling your best friend when they are clearly not. Am I the jerk for telling my wife she was being childish and unreasonable for trying to make me choose between her or my mother? My wife and I have been together for 10 years and married for 3. My wife, Jane Doe, is 29, and I'm 28. Generally speaking, during our years together, we've never really gotten into fights or been at each other's throats. Sadly, this has changed over the last year, ever since my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and I made the choice to care for her using my own funds since my mother has no assets. Recently, we got into a fight because as of late, things have gotten tighter financially. We're not struggling, but our lifestyle has become rather limited compared to what it was prior to me taking care of my mother financially. I've also been less available because I took on a different role at the job, higher pay, but more responsibilities and longer hours. She's been trying to get me to place my mother in a Medicaid-funded nursing facility, and she knows how I feel about that. We both work in the medical field, and we both know exactly what will happen to a case like my mother, who is fully ambulatory but requires hand-over-hand care, but can be combative with strangers because she's oriented to a person rather than a place. I told her even if we went with her idea, does she really think that will make things better? I will still go visit her often just to make sure they're doing right by her, and a private memory care facility would be 2 to 3 times as much what I'm currently paying for her home care. Then she asked, what about us though? We're young. We should be living and enjoying our lives, creating memories and experiences, which I agree with, and I told her we can still do that, just not at the frequency we once did. Then she started to tell me everything I already knew, and at this point, I started to lose my cool. I know it's progressive. I know at one point, if she lives long enough, she will need skilled nursing care. I know spending nearly $6,000 to $8,000 a month on her expenses is not financially sane. She's my mother though. Everything I have is because of her. She made countless sacrifices to raise me by herself, and it was not easy raising a kid, let alone one on the spectrum working multiple jobs by yourself. My wife knows this and knows how much my mom means to me. She tried to play, if your mother was of sound mind, she would want you to enjoy your life and to live happy. I snapped at this point. Sure, you may be right, but if we were really struggling, we're giving up extra vacations and freedom. This is where she replied with, then you have to choose me or your mother. I cannot live this way anymore. At this point, I told her she was being childish and unreasonable, and if she divorces, so be it. But don't try and play the victim or act as if she's being reasonable. Had it been her family, I would understand and do everything I can to support her through it. That's what partners do. They support one another, help lift them up when they fall, not kick them while they're down. You're the jerk. People with Alzheimer's and dementia belong in care homes. Unless you're paying your wife for her help, it's wrong. I say this as someone who had family in both categories. Why are you even making this post? For validation? So as to make you feel that you did nothing wrong and the only bad person is your wife? Because after reading your post and your comments, you absolutely don't want to compromise or accept the judgment of others. So why are you even posting here? You're the jerk. You have the right to take care of your mother, and she has the right to feel upset with it because it's taking away from your presence in the relationship and marriage, and also puts a financial strain in your relationship. For every response, you're just trying to argue with the commenter and don't seem to understand or accept their opinions. If you don't want opinions, then don't post here and ask for judgment. You're only wasting others' time. And lastly, you're the jerk. Not because you want to take care of your mother, but because you don't care what your partner feels and how you even, after posting in this sub, you're not ready to take others' opinions. You're the jerk for the specific question you asked. Am I the jerk for telling my wife she's being childish and unreasonable for trying to make me choose between her or my mother? Yes, you are the jerk because your wife is not childish nor unreasonable according to any mature criteria. She wanted to have an equal discussion with you where the outcome was not predetermined. That isn't childish or unreasonable. She has concerns about the future of your marriage. That's something most spouses would treat seriously and not call childish. She has not been consulted on financial decisions that affect her too. That's how kids are treated, but it does not make her a kid to point out how inappropriate that is. Please believe that all of my sympathies are here with you in your obvious love for your mother and the difficulties her care will bring you. I admire your devotion to her and willingness to support her. For that, you're definitely not the jerk. But your inability to see any solution here but the one you have chosen makes you the jerk. So does your lack of empathy for your wife. You see the situation as black and white. Your wife feels it's more complex than that. Don't insult her by calling her childish or unreasonable until you listen openly to her concerns. I hope you two can come to an understanding about the next steps. You're the jerk. Based on your comments, your wife didn't have any say in the decision to care for your mother. You presented your decision to her and went on your way. That's not how a partnership works. You're not a jerk for wanting to take care of your mother. Your wife is not a jerk for wanting no part in that. However, you are a jerk for being a bad partner and then losing your cool when your wife starts a discussion. If you want a chance for your marriage to continue, you should both seek counseling to figure out what to do. In the meantime, start thinking about how you're failing to support your wife/partner instead of blaming her for not supporting you. How dare he try to support his mother who's dealing with Alzheimer's, knowing that his wife and him would have to cut down on luxury vacations? I'd divorce him too. Am I the jerk for wanting my sister to pay me back because my nephew lost my electric scooter? Last year, I bought an electric scooter, which I've since modified to add more speed, a new handlebar, and some other mods. The scooter itself was not cheap at $1,500, plus mods put it over $2,000. I have a sister who's 43 and a nephew who's 13 who I always let house sit for me while I'm out of town on business. I have pets and plants that I need taken care of, and they always welcome a change of scenery. So I had to go on a business trip last month for a week and I let them house sit. My nephew has always asked me about my scooter, and I told him that it isn't for kids because it's extremely fast, and I've expressly forbidden him from riding it multiple times. His mother knows about this as well. Well, I came back from my trip, and my sister tells me that I'm going to be mad, but my nephew took my scooter out, left it unattended, and it was stolen. I was upset and asked them to leave. I told them they'd have to replace it, and my sister pleaded with me. They couldn't afford it. It was a mistake, and that he could just do chores around my house to pay me back. I told her that it doesn't replace my scooter. She said that any money would have to come from their vacation fund. I said, oh well. Our parents have gotten involved and said that I'm taking this too far. They agree that my nephew should be punished and I should be paid back, but to take away their family vacation is just cruel and petty. They suggested a payment plan. I told them no, that I use my scooter to commute to work often and that I wanted it back immediately. Furthermore, he was warned not to ride it since it's dangerous. Now that I've started to calm down here a little, I'm wondering if I'm being a jerk here by being so demanding and potentially punishing everyone else for my nephew's mistake. She said that the money would have to come from their vacation fund? If replacing the scooter meant they'd have to use money reserved for basic necessities, rent or mortgage, food, utilities, then I'd say you might want to reconsider the payment plan option. But if they're upset because they can't take a vacation this year because of this, then tough crap. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your sister should pay you. Your parents can pay money into your sister's vacation budget. Your sister can make payments back to your parents. Solved. Not the jerk. Repaying you comes before a vacation. You need it to commute to work. Their neglect caused it to be stolen, so they need to face the consequences, especially since it was expressly forbidden that he ride it. My stepdaughter ruined my house, so now I'm getting revenge. I, 43 female, and my husband, who's 47, we've been married for 4 years now. We both have kids from our previous marriages, which includes our 12 and 10-year-old sons and O, who's 18, daughter. My husband and I dated for 3 years prior to getting married, but we all moved in together 2 years ago. O lives with us full-time, and it had a bit of a rocky start with mine and O's relationship, but we managed to push through it. I told O from day one that I wasn't her mom, but if there was anything she wanted to talk about or that she needs, she can come to me. After a few months, we became quite close, and she talked to me about anything she was too embarrassed to talk with her dad about. Recently, O has been trying to make friends at college since she just started in the spring. On-campus residence is very expensive for the college, and it's close to our house, so O decided to stay at home. That's not a problem. The problem is that O keeps bringing her friends over to hang out, but leaving it a mess. Normally, it's not a major deal. I have OCD, so sometimes there are issues depending on the situation though, because she picks up after herself, but I recently hired a housekeeper to clean the house once a week since I've been working overtime more often, and me and my husband just don't have the time to do it. It's expensive, but I can't stand it when it becomes too messy for me, so I think it's worth it. This time, she brought her friends over after the house was cleaned, and I guess they decided not to take their shoes off and walked all around the house leaving footprints. They also made pizza from scratch and left the crumbles on the counters, among other things. They pretty much made the entire house filthy before I could even get home. Once again, the cleaning service is quite expensive because I like it a higher level of cleaning quality, so I was ticked off. My husband is trying to make me let it go because O has always struggled to make friends, but I can't let it go because of how much it cost. I requested the exact amount I paid for the cleaning service to her Venmo, and she acted all confused on why she had to pay for it. I explained that her and her friends ruined my house that was just cleaned, but she insisted it wasn't her. I have a Ring camera, and I have video proof of her and her friends going into the house, and they were the only ones home that day before me. I gave her 2 choices, pay for the damages or I stop paying for her phone. She's complaining, saying it wasn't her, and she doesn't have the money to pay for the phone bill. Am I the jerk? Edit to clear up confusion. The cleaners came before O, fully cleaned the house, then left, and an hour later, O came in with her friends. Footprints in your house and pizza crumbs do not make a house filthy. You had plenty of options other than charging your stepdaughter. You could have cleaned it. Your husband could have cleaned it. You could have asked her to, etc. You're the jerk. Telling your stepdaughter she ruined your house is a sure way to ruin your relationship with her. You're the jerk for calling your house ruined for a fairly easily cleanable mess. She should have cleaned it because you're not the one who usually disciplines, and this is obviously an issue for you, and between the two of you, you should have told her father to enforce that. Of course, her friends should have taken their shoes off. Of course, your stepdaughter needs to clean up after herself and her friends, but she's not a jerk for living and sometimes leaving a mess. Ruined implies actual damage. A mess is a mess, not damage. You're overreacting. You're the jerk. There's nothing wrong with crumbs on the counter. My counter has more crumbs than I know what to do with. You know why? Because that's what happens when you have kids. Same goes for footprints. Unless you're one of those psychos that makes people take off their shoes every time they step foot into your house, you're gonna wind up with some footprints here and there. Big whoop. You sound insufferable, and if I were your daughter, I would do so much more to your precious house just to tick you off. Am I the jerk for making my niece clean and cook to teach her respect? I'm a stay-at-home mom by choice, and my husband works 2 jobs to make that possible for me. Due to his 2 jobs, the majority of housekeeping and cooking is my responsibility. My husband spends extra time with the kids and taking care of them when he's off or has an hour or 2 of downtime and does stuff around the house on his off time. We're happy with this arrangement and it works for us. My niece, Jenny, who's 20, female, is staying with us while she's in college. The only expenses she has is her own food if she doesn't want to eat what we make, her car, and her gas, so she works part-time. She does not like our arrangement at all. Jenny is constantly on about how my husband needs to be doing more around the house and taking care of his kids. I've told her that his contribution is working so that I can pursue staying home, but she doesn't listen and has told both of us that it needs to be 50-50 with housekeeping and the kids. My husband for the most part ignores her. He told her one time he does what he can when he can and hasn't entertained her pestering since. It got to a point I told Jenny she either needs to respect our dynamic, not agree with, just respect, or that she would need to figure out a different living arrangement. A couple days ago, my husband got home early, around 11:30 p.m. He wanted to play some games to unwind before we went to bed. He asked if I moved his console. We were looking for it when Jenny came up from the basement and said that she had his console and would give it back once he actually helped around the house so I could get a break. We got his console back after telling her we will not tolerate stealing in our house and told her we'd figure out what to do about her by the morning. We decided to give her one last chance before kicking her out. We asked what all she thought he should be doing around the house, and she told us, and we then told her that she would be responsible for all of those tasks minus childcare for the week. We sent our oldest to my parents, and for the first 4 days, if it was on that list, I didn't do it. Some mess accumulated, and meals didn't get made 2 out of those 4 days. Jenny complained that she couldn't do everything with her studies and job, but I told her I didn't want to hear it since she expected my husband to do it. The 5th day, Jenny left to stay with a friend, and I got a call from my sister. She feels what we did was cruel and too far since Jenny was just trying to stand up for her aunt. I told her I didn't need Jenny standing up for me. What I needed was for her to respect how my husband and I run our household and not always have a go at him. She wants us to let Jenny come back and drop the cleaning lesson, but I told her no way since she did steal from my husband over this. My own parents are now backing my sister. Were we wrong to have Jenny do housework to make a point? Edit. To the people who are concerned and keep telling me to call a crisis helpline, please buzz off. You're the jerk. Just because your husband sits on his butt all day in an air-conditioned office browsing the internet and talking down to low-paid employees does not give him the right to come home and play video games until it's time to go to sleep. Your niece is 100% right, and it's so sad that you can't see that. Looks like your husband has you brainwashed into his outdated beliefs, and your niece is just trying to get you to wake up from your delusion. This story honestly breaks my heart. Why should all of the childcare or house chores be your responsibility when your husband benefits just as much from a clean house as you do? You're the jerk. I'm sorry, but your niece is correct. This isn't the 50s anymore, and fathers can't get by doing the bare minimum at home just because they have some basic job they do. It's been proven time and time again that stay-at-home moms have it much harder than any father who spends his days goofing off in the workplace. You have to take the kids to school and pick them up, cook breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, etc. Basically be a 24/7 babysitter, and all he has to do is go to work, clock in, and talk to his idiot friends all day. I hope you realize how wrong you are, and don't be surprised when niece goes no contact with you. Not the jerk. What is it with you people here on Reddit? If the dynamic works for them, why can't you just agree to disagree and be happy for OP that her family is happy, healthy, and safe? She said that her husband works 2 separate jobs so that she can be what she'd like to, which is a stay-at-home mom. If that's what makes her happy and it works for them, where's the harm in it? Sometimes I feel like many of you are so anti-tradition that it warps your mind into something that is very broken, to say the least. My fiance refuses to add my name to the house he owns. My fiance, 28 male, and I, 26 female, started dating 3 years ago, and I can't wait to be with him for the rest of my life, but I think I might have messed up. We got engaged 3 months ago and are planning on getting married in November, and last night we were discussing some things about the wedding and the topic of our financial plan for once we're married, which is where the argument started, because I asked him when I would be added onto the deed for the house. Background: when my fiance was 23, his uncle passed and left him a huge inheritance, which has basically set him up for life, especially since he doesn't like super flashy things and only really spends money on his hobbies. And for the first 2 years after this, he struggled to date because he was always worried the girl he was dating was using him. I moved in with fiance a year into our relationship, and he has never charged me for any bills and only expects me to pay for luxury items that I want. 9 months ago, me and my fiance had a discussion in which he asked me if I wanted to stop working because I worked as a teacher and he could tell that my work wasn't making me happy, which he was right. We came to the agreement that I would stop working and some ground rules. The ground rules include that he would give me allowance every month and that he expected me to not just sit at home all day on my phone because he wants me to find hobbies and passions because we both don't want kids. I was totally on board with the rules, and quitting really helped my mental health. So when I brought up having my name added to the house deed, he got really quiet. He told me that he didn't feel comfortable adding my name to the deed as the house had been fully paid off by him before we had even met, and he felt that he is the one responsible for all the payments. This made me upset because I thought he was trying to say that I was using him and we're getting married, so I thought the house would become ours. He told me that things will become ours, but this was the first house he ever bought and that he wanted to keep something for himself. He told me that if we decide to change houses or have one built, which we have discussed before, that he would have both of our names on the deed. This made me more upset because if he's willing to do it on the possible next house, why can't he do it for our current house? We got into an argument and I left to go to my sister's apartment and texted my friend about the situation, and she told me that I was being a jerk and overreacting. But I don't see it that way, and I think he should be willing to put my name on the deed. Am I overreacting and throwing away a good relationship, or is he being a jerk by not seeing my side? You are not the jerk. Once you get married, regardless of job situation or the fact that the house was bought and paid for before you and him got together, you have every right to ask to be on the deed. What if, God forbid, something happens to him? You're potentially left without the house and access to it, especially if there are other family members he may have promised it to or have a current will to. If tables were turned, he'd expect that you add him. He's the one that pushed you to leave your teaching job. It doesn't need to be done until after you're married. I think you should get your own source of income, however, because if something were to happen to him, you're likely not going to get a dime out of the situation. Not the jerk. A marriage is supposed to be a union, two becoming one. What's his is yours, and what's yours is his. There's an unhealthy power imbalance here with your current situation. His giving you an allowance every month is giving him all the power in the relationship. You are completely dependent on him, and this sets up the possibility for a horrible dynamic. I would very much rethink your relationship. Not the jerk. I don't think it's an overreaction. I'm concerned that you're allowing him to have total financial control over your life, though. I'm a teacher myself, and I know it's highs and lows. If not teaching, please find another job, even if it's part-time, so that you have at least that financial independence to fall back on. Not to mention connections to people outside of your significant other. From a legal standpoint, if he wants to protect you and ensure you're never thrown out upon his passing, it would be a good idea to add your name to the deed of the house. Also, for anything related to the house where he might be absent, either out of the country or in hospital, for example, then you can still do what needs to be done. My husband keeps going on solo vacations. I, 40 female, have a wonderful, loving husband who's also 40. He is an involved father, he pitches in with the housework, and he makes enough money for us to be very comfortable while I stay home with our 2 kids. I worked before having kids and intend to again once they're both school age. He's the love of my life. He's wonderful when he's here. He has a dear friend living in a different city 5 hours away who he usually visits for 2 to 3 days twice a month. Uh-oh. A few times a year, they tend to take longer 4 to 6 day trips together. It adds up to a lot of time away, but it's in manageable increments and in service to an important friendship that I wouldn't want him to miss out on. Last fall, they took a 2-week trip abroad. I knew about it well in advance and was fine with it. I figured it was a once every few years type of thing. A month or so after that trip, he tells me they're planning another overseas trip for this spring. This time, it's a place I've always wanted to go to. We had previously started to plan a trip there ourselves, but decided it would have to wait until the kids were older. I told him I wasn't happy, but somewhat grudgingly gave my blessing to what was supposed to be a 7 to 10 day trip. Same goes for another 5 to 7 day trip abroad they decided to plan for this summer, again to a place we had previously talked about going together when the kids are older. And then I found out that first the spring trip and then the summer trip had ballooned into 3 weeks each. I got upset. I cried and told him I felt betrayed and abandoned, like he was leaving me here to raise the kids. Both trips will now cause him to miss significant kid-related events he knew about before planning, while he just goes on doing what he wants and living his life without me. He found my response really hurtful, that I would act like he's abandoning me and the kids, and said that he deserves to have meaningful friendships and see beautiful things. Am I being unreasonable about this? I feel like I might be, because I haven't done a good job balancing parenthood and my own social life. I basically don't have one anymore, and worry I might be speaking from a place of envy than fairness. And we do also take other trips together as a family, but 2 months of intentional travel in the span of a year seems like a lot. And when you also add on the bi-monthly hanging out, that's about 4 months out of the year with his friend. I can count on one hand the number of solo days out I've had in the last 3 years with any of my friends, and so again, I'm not sure how much this is envy versus unfairness. Note, I haven't yet insisted he cancel any of his trips, but want to ask if he'll at least scale the summer trip back to 1 week instead of 3. So, bonus, would I be the jerk if I insisted he scale back the summer trip to 1 week? You're not the jerk, but I do think you're not facing a harsh truth. This dear friend is more than that. He has a live-in nanny and housekeeper who lets him take off and travel whenever and to wherever at his leisure. Use his time away for a month to secure a job, a nanny, then file for divorce and custody. I wish you well. Not the jerk. His amount of travel is way too much. I strongly suspect your husband is having an affair with his friend or using the friend as a cover for an affair. Oh, honey. My husband spends more time on average with me and the kids than your husband spends with you, and mine is in the army. I mean, let that sink in there. Your husband spends less time with you than many people who are legally required to pull 24-hour shifts and deploy at a moment's notice. And for what? To spend his time with a friend? Yeah, no, he's cheating, whether it's physical or not. He's stealing time and money and emotional energy that rightfully ought to be directed towards his wife and kids. He's taking advantage of you and treating you like a live-in nanny. None of that is okay. He deserves to see beautiful things? Oh no. What, do you and the kids not also deserve to see beautiful things? Are your time and your relationships completely worthless? What about your kids and their memories and their relationships? Are they also less important than this grown man's escapism? Forget scaling back the trip. He doesn't need another trip. What he needs is some priorities, and if he refuses to get those in order, then maybe it's time for you to go find a man who can be an actual partner in life. Not the jerk, obviously. You'll only be the jerk if you tolerate this absolutely unacceptable behavior towards both yourself and your kids. Am I the jerk for telling my little stepsister I didn't make any vows to her? My dad got remarried when I, 16 female, was 9. My stepsister, who's 9, was 2 at the time. My mom had passed, and her dad bailed on her mom when she was pregnant with her and was never in her life and never paid child support or anything. When my dad and his wife married, they wanted to do a family unity ceremony, which meant me and my stepsister would be standing there while vows were made to us, and then, as the kid who could speak, I would make a vow to always be there for her, to love her and be her big sister. I passed on that. My dad was upset. His wife was even more upset because she wanted the video to show her daughter one day of me making those vows to her and holding her. The ceremony happened. They made the vows to us while I was sitting and she was being held by her mom, but I didn't make any vows. There has been an expectation set that even though I didn't say the vows, that I would be the big sister my dad's wife wanted for her daughter. The vows she wrote for me say things like, I'll always do your hair when you ask, have makeovers whenever possible, take you to the park, play dolls and climb trees with you, and snuggle on the couch. And that's not even the whole list of what she promised from me. But she did expect that stuff and was disappointed when I didn't do it. Dad pushed sometimes, but not all of the time, which I get, since he probably did want more cohesion from us and for me to make an effort to try and love her and be a sister for her. Around the age of 5, my stepsister started to get a bit more demanding with that stuff, thanks to her mom and my dad a bit. She'd always want me to take her places or always want to tag along with me, was always coming into my room, etc. It got annoying, and when I would play with her or watch a movie with her, she never wanted it to end. She'd cry and whine, and her mom would try and make me keep going when I would say I needed to do my own stuff now. Dad sometimes intervened, but not always. A few nights ago, she came into my room when I was FaceTiming my aunt and said I needed to do her hair the way I did mine at night. She got into my laptop screen and tried to end the call. I had to do it myself, And then when I told her I wasn't doing it for her after that, she said I made vows to be her sister and I was being mean by not. I told her I made no vows. She said I did, and her mom showed me them. I said her mom wrote these, and I never said them. She told me that wasn't true. I called her mom in and told her she needed to stop lying and tell her the truth. Dad came in and told my stepsister the three of them needed to talk. My stepsister was so upset by what I said, and when it was confirmed, she ran off crying to her room saying I don't love her. Dad asked me if I could console her and assure her that I do love her, and I said I couldn't do that, so he went to go comfort her. But his wife said I was a jerk and I should have played along to spare her daughter's feelings. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your stepmother has way too much expectations about sisterhood. I think it would be normal with that big age gap that your bigger sibling doesn't want to play with the younger sibling all the time. And your stepmother and father have been in the wrong when they tried to force the big sister-little sister relationship to happen. These things happen naturally if you give time and space. Got yelled at by a Karen for the first time last night, and I don't feel well now. I've been a server for over 6 years on and off. I only work a few times a month now as I have a full-time 9 to 5. I expected my worst serving experiences were behind me, but last night proved me wrong. I was very busy juggling 8 tables at once. I was literally running and sweating because of how busy it was. It all started when a woman asked for a side of butter. I told her I would go get it for her. I had to go to the bar and drop off some drinks. She then yelled at me about the butter. It had been maybe 45 seconds. I said I haven't been able to get to the kitchen, but I was getting it right away. I ran to the kitchen, ran out, her butter dropped, and ran back. Apparently I threw the butter on the table. It's possible I didn't do it super gentle, but it wasn't meant to be aggressive or anything. She complained to the manager and told him what an evil person I am. He didn't care, but assured her it wasn't malicious. He told me just continue to be nice. I kept checking up. How's it going? Everything good over here? Let me know if I can get you anything, and they stayed mostly silent. At the end, I gave them the check, and after 5 minutes of her intently reading the check, I asked if everything was okay. This is where she got so out of hand. She said I ruined their entire night, how terrible and malicious I was, and my attitude ruined her birthday. She kept being hateful to a point where I just had to walk away and have my manager take care of it. My manager took care of their bill and told her to leave. She then went to the front to go off on me more. I finally couldn't hold it in and outburst with, "Stop! Please leave me alone. I've been nothing but nice to you. Just leave." And she continued throwing her nasty words at me and told my manager I couldn't speak to her like that. My manager repeated exactly what I said and told her to leave as well. My coworkers also demanded for her to leave. Some customers joined in too after witnessing her behavior. As she tried to yell at me more, I was unprofessional and looked her in the eyes and said, "Some people are just miserable." All the tables around her assured me I couldn't have done anything different, but I still feel at fault for some reason. I know this was an overreaction on her part, but I kind of feel unsafe and scared now. I've never experienced anything like this as a server. Edit. Thank you for your reassuring words. Now that I've been able to sleep, I feel 2 times better. I think it was just shocking initially. I appreciate every one of you. Yeah, after trying to de-escalate 3 different ways, you were absolutely right to stand up for yourself. You don't have to take anyone's crap. Her reading the bill for 5 minutes straight was her trying to find ways to get something for free by going off on you. Am I the jerk for not letting my cousin and his family stay at my house, even though I have the extra space? Background. My maternal grandmother got remarried to a wealthy man after my biological grandfather passed when my mom was young. They got divorced after an affair was discovered, and my grandmother got one of his homes in a very, very nice area. Grandma got remarried again to another wealthy man, to the person I call Grandpa. Grandma and Grandpa have since passed, and Grandma left the house to my mom, who was her only kid. Cash was divided between my mom and her step-siblings / my aunts and uncles. The house is huge, beautiful 5-bedroom, 5.5-bathroom, Georgian-style home with a pool and jacuzzi. My grandmother treasured that house and put a lot of effort and love into it over the decades she lived there. I could never sell it. She always said she wanted it to remain in the family for generations. Mom and Dad lived there once Grandma and Grandpa passed and I was out of the house. However, they've since moved to Florida and left the house in my care. This house is a pain in the butt to maintain though. Neither me or my parents are rich by any stretch of the imagination. Every penny of my mom's inheritance goes to maintaining that house. Now the issue. My favorite cousin on my granddad's side asked me recently about moving in. His wife, whom I don't get along all that well with, said that since I have the extra space, they wouldn't mind them and their 2 kids moving in for a while. According to them, they're tired of slumming it in the city in an apartment and were hoping they could get a higher quality of life in a nice neighborhood. They could save the money from rent and put it towards their own house in a year or 2. I was put on the spot, but I told them no, that I valued my privacy and solitude. I told them that my lifestyle conflicts with theirs and it wouldn't work. They called me selfish for not even considering it, and that I should at least take some time. I told them the answer would be the same if I did think about it. My dad's side of the family said I'm being selfish. My dad assured me he's taking care of it and he's on my side. Mom has told me under no circumstances am I allowed to let anyone move in. Reddit, I have to wonder if I'm being selfish here. I mean, I have a ton of room and I'd be helping out my family and my little nibblings. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk 100,000%. You don't owe your home to anyone. That's an insane boundary they crossed by assuming it would be okay. Valuing your privacy and solitude is your right, and you do not owe them a darn thing. Living with someone is a really special experience. I wouldn't do it either. Some people are like that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I am the same as you. The Soy Lady. Many years ago, I worked at a small cafe. The customers were generally lovely, and it was not a very popular place due to it being in a weird location, so it was always slow and quiet. We often got regular customers in, and when I started, I was warned about the Soy Lady. She was an older woman who came in to order an extra-large takeaway cup of extremely hot soy milk. The staff would heat 2 cups of soy milk to the edge of burning, put it on the counter, and call her name. She would sit down at a table and wait for about 5 minutes after her name was called, then collect it. She then always came back to the counter after drinking half to complain the soy milk wasn't hot enough and demand for it to be redone, for free. She also argued the cost, $3, relentlessly when she ordered at the counter. Our manager was a spineless weasel and hated customers getting Karen-y at the counter in case it caused other customers to think this is a bad place. So he always caved to her bizarre demands and would berate the staff in front of her so he would look good for being a tough manager. So shortly after I started, I met Soy Lady. It vaguely bothered me she was getting away with nasty comments to staff and an absolutely ludicrous addiction to lava-hot soy milk. Because, what the heck? But not enough to actually do anything about it. Until one day, my manager decided that it was our fault we couldn't make the soy milk to her specifications, which apparently cost the business a lot of money, and he would take the full cost of her drink from our paycheck each time she returned it. Illegal? Yes. Immoral? Absolutely. Completely insane? You know it. So the next day, my manager decided to take the morning off, presumably due to the mutinous mood of the cafe staff. Soy Lady rocks up, argues the cost of $3 as usual, pays, and then says, "Don't forget to make it hot this time," with a nasty smirk on her face. Filled with sudden inspiration, I ask, "As hot as I can make it?" She replied, "Yes, even though I doubt you can do it right." Neat. I insisted she wait at the counter because it was going to be ready immediately. Filled up a metal jug with soy milk, shoved it under the espresso steamer wand, and let it scream. You're supposed to adjust the jug so the milk spins, but I just let it boil, screaming loudly as I stared blankly right at her horrified face. For what felt like 2 minutes, though probably shorter, she started to look nervous halfway through, and every customer was staring. 45 seconds in, she started to try to tell me that it was done, but I shouted, "I think it can still get hotter," over the wail of the burning soy milk. Finally, I took it off the wand, which was now crusted brown with burnt milk, tripled up on the takeaway cups because it was unbearably hot, and then told her we now charge $5 for cups of soy milk starting immediately, and we charge full price for refills, management's orders. Not true, but I was done by that time. Interestingly enough, I never saw Soy Lady again. Am I the jerk for letting my fiancé fend for himself after he constantly compared me to his mom? My fiancé had a heart attack and required an open heart surgery 2 weeks ago. He just got home a few days ago and I'm caring for him. A little backstory. His mom and I don't have a good relationship. Since the beginning of my relationship to my fiancé, His mom would constantly try to compete with me and one-up me on everything. She always claimed she should be the first woman in my fiance's life because she birthed and raised him, and how I can't break their bond. For the most part, these comments were unprovoked, and at first, I would be too scared to defend myself. But later, I stood up for myself, and my fiance stood up for me and established some boundaries with his mom. His mom sometimes crosses some of those boundaries, but for the most part, she's been acting a bit better. During his stay in the hospital, both I and his mom took turns staying with him. Ever since we got home, I'm the one caring for him 24/7. And I don't mind. I love him and I want him to get better. But I got extremely upset because after we got home, he was being ungrateful about everything. He started comparing me to his mom. He started saying his mom would do this thing better, and why can't I do it like his mom does, since that's how he likes it? He gave backhanded compliments to the foods I make and says, "It's good, but it's not like my mom's." He sometimes also snaps at me because I won't do something quick enough or properly enough, and he will tell me words like, "I wish my mom was here. She wouldn't be so useless. Just tell her to come here if you can't do these basic tasks." I was patient with him because I don't want to upset him during his recovery. What made me lose my mind and leave the house was when he told me that his mom was probably right when she said she should be the first woman in his life, since she'd care about him better than I do, and how it was a mistake establishing boundaries with her, and that I was the one he should have established boundaries with. After this comment, I didn't think twice. I just packed my clothes in my handbag and left and went and stayed at my cousin's house. He called me and said that I'm the jerk for leaving him home alone while he's recovering, and that I should have at least called his mom first so she'd come. I told him he should call her, and it's none of my business anymore. My parents told me I was out of line for leaving him to fend for himself, and that he's right, that I should have called his mom first, and now I'm the jerk for making this about me when my fiance's recovery should be my priority. Not the jerk. Go back, pack the rest of your stuff, and leave him for good. He's showing his true colors. A mama's boy will always be a mama's boy, and you'll always come second. OP. For all these years, he was an amazing partner who was able to set all the right boundaries to his mom. I don't know what changed now, and he switched that fast. Nothing changed. This is who he is. It's easy to put up boundaries when things are going well. I have sympathy for him in terms of his recovery from surgery, but ultimately, it's difficult circumstances that really test a partner's willingness to maintain said boundaries. If he can go back on his word this time, he'll do it again. Exactly. Sure, the surgery is a huge, emotional, and painful process that can bring out the worst in some people, but it sounds like he has adjusted his true self long enough to lock OP into marriage and kids. Once that happens and OP is tied down, mommy will take over his life again. Karen pulls a cruel prank on her stepmom, gets kicked out. My ex's wife, Anna, is a sweetheart. I don't know the details, but Anna had a crappy father, which caused her to fear men. She's better now, but signs of male anger still freak her out sometimes. Anyways, my ex and I share a 19-year-old daughter, Jazz. Jazz and her father were never especially close, but they treat each other with respect. She only sees her dad for a week every month, but she likes her dad's family. Anyways, Jazz was at her dad's for like 5 hours when my ex called me to come pick her up. Turns out she invited her boyfriend over and they both decided to prank Anna. It was a cruel prank knowing her history with her father, but Jazz and her boyfriend found it hilarious. Anna was inconsolable and her kids called their dad because of how upset she was. I was horrified but kept my cool to listen to Jazz's side. But when I picked her up, she was like, "OMG, it was just a joke and it was my boyfriend's idea. Besides, Anna's grown and her dad's been dead, so what's the big deal?" I asked her if she decided to do the prank knowing how Anna would react. She argued with me on this and said, "Well, it was my boyfriend's idea." I asked her if he made her do it or if he begged her to do it. She said no. I asked her if she laughed and found it funny. She said yeah, no shame. So I said, then it's your fault just as much as it's your boyfriend's fault. If you're that weak that you do something so hurtful just because your boyfriend said so, then clearly I haven't done my part. She seemed to ignore everything I said except for the "you're weak" part. She went, "Wow, Mom, now I know what you really think of me." I told her to cut it out, but she said, "You called me weak and insulted me and expect me to listen to you? You might be my mom, but that doesn't give you the right to insult me. I'm an adult for goodness sake. I told her to act like one then and stop living off of me if she's such a big adult. She said fine and she called her boyfriend and left. But I feel terrible. I didn't mean it at all. And now I feel like maybe I shouldn't have called her weak or told her to stop living off of me. I should have just told her to cut it out. But yeah, I know I can't take it back, but my husband thinks I didn't do anything wrong. Neither does my mom, though she does think that I let her go too easily. I don't know. I'm overwhelmed and confused, and my daughter isn't talking to me, and Anna's apparently not doing too well. And I don't know. Not the jerk. If she's an adult, she'll be judged as an adult, especially on her inability to take responsibility and casual cruelty. You were honest with her, and she chose to take offense, instead of addressing the lack of empathy that brought all this on. Let her live in the real world a while. I can't imagine a harsher or more appropriate punishment. Act with kindness or get out isn't that much to ask, in my humble opinion. Am I the jerk for not pulling over while transporting a cheetah? I'm a zookeeper of 11 years and got the call yesterday that we had acquired 2 cheetahs from another zoo, about 4 hours away. Happens from time to time. Zoos decide that particular animals might be better off at one facility than another. We left in one of our transport vans around 2 p.m. I took 2 keepers with me. Let's call them Seth, who's been around as a swing keeper for a few years, has a bit of cat experience, and Megan, fairly new to the industry, brought her partially for the experience and partially because she was the only other one who wanted some extra hours working late. We arrive at 6 p.m. and get to see these 2 beautiful cheetahs, and Seth helps me get them loaded into our crates. He does ask, shouldn't we wait for them to go to the bathroom before driving back with them? Which I know is a common practice sometimes, but I said, nah, it could be hours, and the van smells of animals already. We'll be getting back late enough as it is. So they agreed and we headed back. It was a bit cramped, but we made it work. Megan sat up front with me and Seth sat in the back with the cheetah crates. Had to keep them in the passenger compartment to observe them, make sure they were okay. The drive back went fine until right before the 3-hour mark. Predictably, one of the cheetahs relieved itself. Seth said, "Oh no," it went. And a few seconds later, the smell hit us up front. Honestly, to me, it just smelled like healthy cheetah dew. But I was mostly just happy to know that the cheetah we got was healthy. It sprayed too, intact male cheetah, which did make it worse. When the smell hit Megan, she started gagging, saying, "Oh my God, it's atrocious." I agreed, but kept driving. Less than a minute later, she said, "Please, can we pull over? I'm going to be sick." I said that it'll be hard to clean this. It's only another hour and a half tops. But she said, "I don't know if I can make it an hour in this." I really hoped we could make it back, but when even Seth lost his composure and started retching, I knew this wasn't good, and Megan was practically crying. So I relented and pulled off at the next exit and pulled up behind a gas station to clean the crate. But not before Megan threw up. Seth had to help me transfer the cheetah, and then we cleaned the crate and Megan's throw up. Then we got back in, but Megan recoiled and gagged, saying the van still reeked of throw up, cheetah dew, and spray, which was true. She asked if we could let it air out for another hour, but I said no, sorry, it would barely help, and we need to be getting back. She looked ill and miserable the whole drive back and has been a bit standoffish to me since. I'm not her regular direct manager, so it's not really my place to intervene. Seth did say the next day, "That's what I was afraid of," but I think my actions were justified. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I've done animal transports. Freezing, wet, smelling horribly. The animals come first. There is no waiting. You make it as short and as least stressful as possible for the animal. People can deal with it. Awesome that you stopped for them when they got sick. I would have passed them a bucket. All the "you're the jerks" are coming from people who have never worked with non-domesticated animals. Info. Is the intent for Megan to work with big cats at all? If so, I thought this was something all big cat keepers had to go through. I know I threw up 6 times in my first week working with lions, but they never gave me any breaks or help enduring it, and said eventually I'd acclimate if I stuck with it. Finally I did, sort of, but oof, it took some time, I'll tell you that. If not, then you would be the jerk. Don't put people through that smell who don't need to deal with it as part of their jobs. Not the jerk. You're zookeepers. Animals are going to do what animals are going to do. This sounds like a normal part of a job that's sometimes stinky. Sounds like Megan, and perhaps Seth, should find a different career. My son expects me to keep a promise I made over 20 years ago. I have two sons, Jake, who's 30, and Carlos, who's also 30. Carlos is technically my stepson, but he's still my son. I adopted him. I have a ranch. It's only 2 hours away from the city, so I used to go every week with my son Jake when he was little. During one of the trips to the ranch, I offhandedly promised him that one day this ranch would be his. I met Carlos' dad when Jake and Carlos were 6. I married him a year later. Both Jake and Carlos used to go with me almost every week to the ranch, depending on if they were busy. When they were both 16, Jake picked up football pretty seriously, so he couldn't go to the ranch so much anymore. Carlos continued to go with me until 18 when he went to college and studied engineering and agriculture. Jake got a degree in finance. After college, Carlos asked me if he could move to the ranch to work there full-time. Of course, I agreed. That was 8 years ago. Since then, he has made great improvements, and I can confidently say he's the biggest reason as to why the ranch is thriving. He also now has a wife and a daughter who live there full-time. On the other hand, Jake didn't really show any interest towards the ranch. He maybe goes once every 4 months. I was having dinner with Jake the other day. We were reminiscing a dear family friend who recently passed without a will and how his family is now looking towards a long process of litigation because they couldn't agree about how to split his stuff. I said, "Good thing that I already decided mine." Jake was surprised and asked me how I'm going to split my net worth. I told him that the stuff from his mom was going to him, and the ranch was to be split between Carlos and him, and the house will stay with my husband. Jake then asked me if I remembered the promise I made to him when he was 6. I said I did. Then he asked me why I'm not honoring that promise. I was shocked. I asked him if he was being serious, and he said yes. Then I said, "It's insane that you're expecting me to do that. You're being ridiculous." He was not happy. We finished dinner quickly after that, and when I told him goodbye, he said to me to not contact him for a while because he had to sort out his feelings about this. That was a week ago, and he hasn't returned any of my calls. Carlos is also mad at me because Jake is basically his best friend and hasn't talked to him either. My husband is staying out of all of this. Not the jerk. Carlos has sweat equity in the ranch at this point. You would be justified in leaving the ranch to Carlos alone. But you are splitting the ranch so Jake gets half of it. That's fair, and it's not breaking a promise. If Jake wants the entire ranch, he can buy out Carlos' half, which Carlos has earned. OP, make sure your attorney has an airtight will with your wants clear as crystal. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Not sure if the people calling you the jerk have kids, because it's weird for them to be saying you should be keeping the promise to give a whole ranch to a 6-year-old. You were obviously being sweet in the moment. Not to mention, you didn't have 2 kids at the time. You're the jerk. You made a promise that meant a lot to him, and when, for good reason, reneging on it, you called him insane and ridiculous. An explanation was warranted, not name-calling and belittling. You're not the jerk for how you want to divide your assets, just the way you handled this conversation. Personally, you're the jerk. I have a friend who bought her parents' house for $1 when she was a kid. Her parents have it in their will that she gets the house, and her sisters don't have legal entitlement to that property. Currently, one of her sisters lives in the house, and before she makes any changes to the property, she has to ask their parents, and my friend. Don't make promises to kids you don't intend to keep. Kids will always remember. Am I the jerk for walking out of my birthday dinner? Edit to add. In the past, they've recorded it on their phones and shared it on their personal social media pages with other family. Even in other countries, they find it funny. Still part of the edit. I also would be okay with singing for someone else. It's the making a whole spectacle of me that's the problem. I, 35 female, am an introvert and have severe anxiety. Being the center of attention is my biggest nightmare. I would be fine living alone in the woods as a recluse. Because of that, I hate to go out for my birthday. I'll either spend it alone or at home with close friends where I'm more comfortable. I have some friends and family who always want me to go out for my birthday with them, and sometimes I go. Unfortunately, even though I literally beg them not to, every once in a while someone will think it's funny to tell the staff it's my birthday and to have them do the whole dessert and sing happy birthday, and I literally go into a full-on panic attack. They think it's hilarious. I've even had them pull out cameras and record while they laugh. A week ago, my grandma passed. The family pushed and wanted to do a birthday dinner. Said it would be good to get out of the house. Some close friends also went. Well, we're finishing up dinner, and I hear the sound that literally filled me with anger and rage. It was the sounds of the line of waitstaff clapping as they're all walking towards us with a dessert with candles, and they start their restaurant's signature, loud, obnoxious birthday song. My brother and his wife start laughing. With the waitstaff about 5 feet away from our table, I got up and walked out of the restaurant, got in my car, and went home. My mom says she was mortified and says I was a major jerk, and that it wasn't only rude to everyone who came to my birthday, but also to the staff, and that she had to apologize profusely and leave an extra tip. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I'd tell my kids, it's only funny if it's funny for everyone. Being the eternal butt of their one-note joke is too much. It's not funny. It was never funny. Don't do your birthday with them again. I'm pretty sure that even seeing you this upset won't change their behavior. Not the jerk. I would absolutely get up to go to the bathroom as soon as you get to a restaurant with any of these people and ask for the manager and tell them that you do not want the birthday treatment no matter what anyone says. Not the jerk. Your family constantly oversteps your very reasonable boundaries to do what they want to do. I would refuse to go out with them anytime within 6 weeks of your birthday ever again. Also, do what you want to do. You're an adult, and no is a complete sentence. Not the jerk, but I agree that having a panic attack when people are singing happy birthday to you is not healthy. Unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say you're the jerk. I get social anxiety as well, but walking out is, in my opinion, a disproportionate response. Leaving the restaurant also drew attention to you, so maybe just sitting through the song and cake would have been less attention gathering. Unless someone intentionally harmed you, I don't think walking out is a fair response. It's a bit childish in my opinion. Am I the jerk for no longer wanting to put up with my boyfriend's mom? I, 30 female, can't stand my boyfriend, who's 29, his mom. It started last October when I found out that I was pregnant. I told my boyfriend not to tell anyone yet, since until we get the ultrasounds for our baby. But we agreed to tell his mom as he kept insisting on it. A few days later, I met with my aunts, and one of them said I shouldn't eat too much because it would be hard to give birth when I get heavy. I was shocked because I hadn't told anyone from my side of the family yet. I was devastated because I wanted to be the one to tell my family about my pregnancy when I was ready. I asked my boyfriend if he found it weird that my aunts already knew about my pregnancy, and he brushed it off like it was a normal thing by saying, "Oh, Mom must have mentioned it to them. Don't worry about it." A few days later, my boyfriend and I got into an argument about a vacation I booked for us months prior to finding out. I told him that we should still go since the flights were already booked and we can't cancel or refund them. We can still go sightseeing at least before we get anchored down to the house with a baby. He was strongly opposed to it and said that it's best we stayed home and that I rest. Later in the day, my boyfriend's mom calls me to check in. I told her that everything was fine. There was a lull, and she mentioned that it would be best that you stay home and rest until baby is here, and you shouldn't be wasting money on useless trips. I immediately wanted to drop the call. I felt suffocated. I confronted my boyfriend about it when he came home from work. He told me he didn't know how else to make me listen about not going on our trip, and he told his mom that I was being stubborn. I told him that we didn't need anyone else's opinion on how we live our lives, and that he shouldn't be telling his mom private matters. Then that's where I began to notice that every little thing I do, his mom would give me motherly advice. I got so stressed out about it. And then later on, I found out that during the days when my boyfriend was at work, he and his mom are on the phone for 2 to 3 hours catching up, almost daily. He has Wednesdays off, and his mom doesn't call him when he's home. I lost the baby in January of this year, and his mom still had a lot to say about how we should have listened to her. So, am I the jerk for no longer wanting to put up with my boyfriend's mom? Not the jerk. He won't change, she won't change. It's up to you to change and get out. Run. Don't walk away from this one before you get pregnant again and get stuck with this mom for as long as she lives. You're not in a relationship with him, you're in a relationship with them. I could go on, but you already know there's no fixing it. Don't let him try to say he'll change. His relationship with her will always be more important because she's programmed him that way since he was a toddler. Not the jerk, and run. OP. Hello everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my problems. I want to say 2 things from reading all your comments. 1. I am in love with the mama's boy and potentially in a relationship with him and his mom. It's suffocating to think my boyfriend doesn't have a mind of his own and has to run to his mom to have opinions about our future. Thank you for letting me know that I wasn't the only crazy one here. 2. His whole family is toxic. His grandma is also very controlling. He said he didn't want to be like them, and he wasn't until… it infuriates me. I'll have a sit-down talk with him to finally establish my set boundaries. If he can't handle not telling his mom everything, then we won't work out. Am I the jerk for not buying nice food for my boyfriend? I, male 34, and my boyfriend, male 33, have been together for a very long time, and we used to have very cheap rent and disposable income. And as a result, we used to go out to eat at restaurants and have nice food regularly. But in the last 4 to 5 years, rent and bills have increased, and the cost of living has meant that we don't anymore. I still make an effort to buy nice ingredients and make nice food, often suggesting getting takeout from nice food places near us. But the cost of living crisis, which hasn't really affected us too much, has made my boyfriend paranoid that we shouldn't spend much money on food since it's a waste. I'm a big foodie. I've been working in hospitality all my life. I love to cook, love to eat, and it bums me out when I have to settle for crappy food. I work a lot, and when I'm at home and he's cooking, maybe 1 to 2 times a week, it's 100% low effort, cheap cuts of bad quality meat, really fatty supermarket belly pork, chicken wings, canned sardines, processed meat disc things, value range jarred sauces, cheap vegetables with no seasoning, etc. I hate it and tend to re-prepare it into something that I like. But when I cook for the both of us, which is 3 to 4 times a week, I'll go to the butcher, get fresh vegetables, fresh herbs, nice spices, spend some time making something tasty with some sides, etc., and he always says how lovely it is. But when I suggest, maybe you can get some nice ingredients, or maybe you can go out with me once or twice and we split the bill, then he starts on this rant of, I actually enjoy cheap food. It's quick and simple, blah, blah, blah. And it annoys me because we have money. We work hard for it, and I have to sell for food that a student would eat. Today, I have a day off, first in 8 days, and he said to me, you buy and cook tea tonight. I've had a hard day. I suggested going out or getting a takeout, and he just sent a money emoji. So I went into the cupboard, made him a meal he made for us a week or 2 ago. Jarred tomato sauce, can of sardines, cooked some pasta, boiled some frozen vegetables, and plated it up and put it in the microwave for when he's ready to eat. Then I ordered myself a Chinese takeout. The takeout came, and he said, you didn't ask what I wanted. So I said, you told me you didn't want takeout. Your dinner is in the microwave. And he got really sad and upset. I explained I didn't forget about him. I cooked him a meal he claimed to really enjoy, then spent my money on something I really enjoy. He didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. That was yesterday, and he's not mentioned it today. Not the jerk. You made him food that he felt was suitable for the both of you. He didn't want takeout. What more could you do? What's happening isn't that he's preparing food that he likes. He's sandbagging it, getting the cheapest crap and preparing it in a haphazard way, hoping that you'll just take over the cooking. Some people legitimately believe that if you do a crappy job at something you don't want to do, you won't be asked to do it again. Problem solved. Am I the jerk for threatening to make my in-laws homeless? I, female 38, am the primary breadwinner for my household. My husband, who's 42, is semi-retired due to an injury at work. He's a great husband and has taken over all of the housework that needs to be done during the day. We share all the duties when I'm not working. Recently, his sister, her husband, and their 2 teen kids lost their home. We have a rental suite in our basement that we just use as a family area, so we agreed to let them live there. Because I'm paranoid, I had them sign a lease. A few days ago, my husband had an opportunity to do some consulting at his old work. He loves doing it because it gets him out of the house and he gets to see his old coworkers and friends. It was short notice, so we hadn't arranged babysitting. We asked his sister to watch our youngest for the day so he could go work, and she agreed. She then delegated the task to her 13-year-old son. Then she had her nap. The kid didn't want to disturb his mom during her nap, so he banged on my door while I was working to change a diaper. Fair enough. He's 13, so I see why he wouldn't be comfortable doing it himself. I asked where his mom was, and he said she was napping. I woke her up and told her that she had agreed to watch her niece and to do so. I waited for my husband to get home, and we discussed his family. We decided together that they needed to start paying the amount on the lease, leave, or start helping around the house. We took all the kids over to my mother-in-law's house, then we sat them down and had a talk. We gave them their options. They said I was a jerk for tricking them into signing a lease agreement and then not collecting it so I could evict them. I said that wasn't the only choice. I said that she was the one who chose to lay off a responsibility on a kid. I said that I was basically the one supporting her, and if she couldn't help, then she had to give me money or leave. Some further information. Neither her nor her husband have jobs right now. They're buying groceries with his unemployment benefits. I set up the lease because of horror stories that I've heard about people claiming to be tenants. There's absolutely nothing unreasonable about this. The fact that they are protesting this arrangement and demanding free lodging is a sign that you should just ask them to leave right now. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You aren't threatening. You're having healthy rules and boundaries. You're giving them an entirely reasonable choice. Pay rent, contribute another way, or have a different living situation. There's nothing wrong with that. And good for you for setting up that lease. That was an extremely smart move. Neighbor playing music till past 4 a.m. and gets indignant and rude after I politely ask her to turn it down. I believe the text messages speak for themselves, but just for some extra context, this is a text exchange between me and my neighbor. We've been friends for 10 plus years and share a thin wall in an apartment. Monday, 3:07 a.m. Me. Could you turn your music down, please? The bass is coming through the wall. Thanks. I said thanks because I thought she had turned it down. Turns out the song had just ended and she kept playing music till past 4 a.m. But at that point, I passed out. These are the texts I woke up to. Monday, 5:55 a.m. Her. Oh, please, get over yourself. My one day off. Mean gesture emoji. 6:55 a.m. Me. Not my day off. Get over yourself. I was super polite. At 3 a.m. too, which nobody else would have been. At that point, I'm up and rage-fueled, so I put my speaker, smallest speaker I have by the way, next to her wall and turn on the bassiest music I have while doing my morning work. 7:45 a.m. Her. Keith, for the love of God, you are so selfish and it truly is insane. I have not had an opportunity to listen to music or be out in months, and the one time, all you can think about is yourself. It amazes me how truly selfish and self-aware that you are. Sometimes I'm like, is he even my friend? Or is he just some jerk who lives next to me? You literally only care about yourself. Me. Anytime you ask me to do some basic neighbor stuff, I do it. I ask you to do even more basic neighbor stuff, and you tell me to go forget myself. Her. And now you are aggressively playing music because you can only think about yourself, right? For years, I never said anything because I was like, one day it will be my turn. And now look at you. Disgusting. You're pathetic. You only see yourself. It's amazing. Me. You only care about yourself. It's unacceptable socially and legally to play music after 2 a.m. That's when bars have to close here. Don't ask me for crap again. Her. I've been working 80-hour weeks, and I got one night to enjoy myself. I cannot believe all you can think about is you. It amazes me. Me. Then get some headphones. I'd like to play music every morning, but I don't because I think of you and our other neighbors. I hope you're wasted because any sober, reasonable person will see how in the wrong you are. Her. I'll live without you. You break my heart. It's like you don't even see me. After 12 years, it's just you that matters. Me. Sweet. Just please have common courtesy and keep the music down after 12 a.m. Sunday through Thursday. That's literally all that I'm asking. Her. Again and again, and I wonder why I even try with you. Me. My sleep matters more to me than you being a self-absorbed jerk. Her. You can buzz off, dude. Me. Blocked. I'd call the police past midnight. It has to be against some noise ordinance. After calling the police, I would inform the landlord, assuming you both rent from the same person, of the action you had to take. Don't let the behavior go. It only gets worse. Am I the jerk for letting my stepkids call me dad, even though it upsets my wife? I married my wife last year, after 4 years of dating, and we mixed our families. Her 2 sons, Dylan and Tyler, who are 16 and 11 now, and my daughter, Sam, who's 18 now. Our kids accommodated to the idea of living together pretty well. Dylan and Ty's father and my wife got divorced when Tyler was born, and they agreed he would only have visitation rights. Around 2 or 3 years ago, Tyler called me dad while we were having dinner, and that night, my wife asked me to correct her kids when they call me dad, out of respect for their actual father. I found it weird, but I agreed to, because in the end, they're her kids, although I never ended up doing it. This week, Dylan had a football match and Tyler a piano lesson, which my wife usually picks them up after. This time, both she and I didn't have to work, so I suggested picking them up together. Dylan practically jumped to our car, and then we all went to pick up Tyler. And since I was there, I decided to meet his piano teacher too. When she met my wife, Dylan, and me, she greeted us and asked me if I was the kids' dad. I sincerely forgot about that promise I made years ago and said I indeed was their father. My wife almost instantly corrected me with, "Stepfather." And then Dylan said out loud, "Mom." The return home was awkward, and when we arrived, she called me out for breaking the promise we had by saying I'm the kids' dad. To make it worse, this morning, I noticed the kids are acting distant towards their mother, and they deliberately are calling me dad whenever she's around. I feel guilty because it's the first time there's been such tension between them, and it's my fault. Am I the jerk for calling them my kids? Your wife is working towards an estranged relationship with her boys. We can parent as much as we want, but we will never control our kids' feelings. She has assigned herself way too much power and her kids too little autonomy. We aren't talking about 6-year-olds. You didn't do anything other than step up to the plate that another man abandoned. Not the jerk. The whole goal of step-parenting is to have this kind of relationship. How can OP's wife be so mad about something so many people would dream of having? Because she's still dreaming of reconciling with the biological father. That was my first thought. Then I read the comments, and apparently the biological father misses visitation but still sees OP's wife regularly, which implies they're having an affair behind OP's back. I just hope OP isn't putting money into Dylan's college fund. Why? Why this in particular? If Dylan considers OP to be his dad, and OP feels much the same, would it be so bad? The kid's done nothing wrong, and his education isn't for his mother's benefit. I created a college fund for my ex's kid, who I love very much. A bad feeling between the parents shouldn't affect the kid. Not the jerk. She's upset because you are a father to her kids and love them and they love you back? I could understand their dad being upset, but not her. And honestly, not even him. He has visitation. You live with them. OP. He doesn't even visit them, so I actually would get mad if he protested. Not the jerk. I would understand if he was still in the picture, but I don't understand why your wife would want them to call you stepdad out of respect for an absent father. Respect is earned. He's done nothing to earn it and nothing to earn the title of dad. On the other hand, clearly you have. ETA. Okay, I see a lot of people responding to my comment, talking about the wife having an affair with the ex-husband. I didn't see his comments about the ex-husband still meeting with his wife regularly before I commented this. However, I still stand by my statement. He might still be actively present in the wife's life, but he is certainly not around enough in the kids' lives to earn the title of dad. Not the jerk. If the kids think of you as dad, then you're dad. Dad is not limited to biological father. Why can't the kids have two dads? Also, it should be seen as the highest of compliments. OP's wife should be grateful that her sons see and feel that way about their stepfather. It definitely isn't always the case. Your wife is the weird one, dude. It's almost as if she only wanted you to be there for the financial support, not to be a father to her kids. Her kids like you. The fact that they got upset on your behalf is proof of that. That's why they're deliberately going out of their way to call you dad. She hurt their feelings. She may not see you as her kid's dad, but they sure as heck see you as their dad. OP. That's the reason I never could tell them to stop calling me dad, even when I still wasn't as attached to them as I am now. Their tone was always affectionate and innocent, and nowadays, it even makes me happy that they consider me their dad. Being a stepdad was one of the best things I've had happen to me. Neither kid ever called me dad, and I was okay with that. If they did, I would have been okay with that also. The youngest is now 30 and still calls me dude. Close enough for me. I'm wondering if your wife is afraid of what her ex would do or say when her kids start calling you dad. Question, is the biological father's family present in the boys' lives? If they are, they can cause problems with your wife. OP, my wife and her ex are friends, but his family aren't present on Dylan and Tyler's lives. In fact, dude isn't either, to be honest. That honestly blows my mind. I'd have a really hard time being friends with the guy who abandoned our kids. I don't know what is up with your wife, but obviously the boys love you, so you're doing something right. OP. From what she told me, they broke up because they weren't attracted to each other anymore and preferred to go back to being friends. Well, now I wonder if she's just hung up on the guy and is upset that her kids have written him off. What? Hang on. She's friendly towards a guy who doesn't give a hoot about his own and her kids? Like, she can actually have a friendship going with him despite this? I predict in a couple years, her going back to him and leaving you with the kids. Seriously. And you'll be the winner here. Print out the internet? Yes, ma'am. This is about a decade ago, but still well within the realm of the internet. I was a technical writer for the government and had slowly been transferring our old employee handbook, think government bureaucracy from the 1940s, into a modern and actually useful document. Think one page with our policies and links to useful websites, like Office of Personnel Management, forms for workman's comp, etc. My boss wanted the whole thing printed out on her desk the next morning. This was Monday of the Thanksgiving weekend. I printed out the 200 or so pages and just had the links to the various websites in bold. This took about an hour and I left it on her desk before going home that night. She calls me in her office on Tuesday afternoon and proceeds to yell at me about how stupid I am. Do I think people can just go to a website when it's on paper? No, I need to print everything out. I calmly tell her that these sites are pretty dense and deep and it would be about 10,000 pages. She says she does not care. It needs to be on her desk first thing Monday morning. Mind you, this is now Tuesday, and we usually had some of Wednesday off. I was not really planning to work Thursday, Thanksgiving, or Friday, as I had applied for leave, and I was looking forward to a nice, relaxing, long weekend. I don't have family, but I did have plans. But okay, I asked for and got the request to have everything pertaining to the employee handbook online in a printed format. I also had real work and real deadlines. A quick bit of context. She was my boss. She did my performance appraisals, and she could make my life miserable and possibly fire me. However, my clients were teams that put together engineering plans, biological assessments, scientific journal articles, reports to Congress, etc., that had real-world deadlines. On some of these, if you missed the publication date, your agency paid $100,000 a day in delay fees. Or you would upset a congressperson, which is never a good idea. And I was really getting sick and tired of my boss's requests that took me away from my actual work. So I was printing and printing all of the rest of Tuesday afternoon and then Wednesday. I had to go to the site, print, click on the next link, print, etc. On Wednesday, we got a congressional, a letter from a Congress critter that was actually important. Had we not gotten that, I might not have done what I did. I got overtime approved pronto to take care of this request, so I did work Thanksgiving. As I was doing that, I kept on printing and printing. I used up every sheet of paper in our 14-story building. I kept on researching the response for the congressional, printing, going to the next floor to carefully get that packet of paper to tuck under the appropriate page, etc. I had paper in about 20 different conference rooms. I could have done the congressional in about 8 hours, but it was not due until Monday, and all of this printing took me a good 24 hours of work. So I put in for 32 hours, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Got it done. This is now 2 stacks of paper, each about 6 feet high. I was way under in my estimate of 10,000 pages, as it was more like 30,000. Remember, I had at least 5 printers going at once for 4 days, etc. I put this in my boss's office, which was already none too clean and pristine. I got written up with a disciplinary hearing and everything. The charge was malicious compliance. I kept my job only because I did have her request in an email. My new boyfriend wants me to put his name on the house. I, 27 female, have been with my boyfriend, who's 29, for 6 months. Our relationship so far has been awesome. He's sweet and we get along so well. I've been saying since we met that in 2 years I'm going to buy a house, that I'll be working myself as hard as I can in that time to make it happen. A little context for you guys. I'm a single mom of 2 kids who are 11 and 8. I've been through what feels like a lifetime of struggle, and though I'll spare you all those details, I'm sure you can imagine. One of those struggles was being homeless for about 12 months. When I was growing up, my dad raised me in our family home. I didn't have much, but having a stable place to live was something that I never took for granted growing up, something that I've been dying to give my babies. For the past 4 to 5 years, I've been doing well for myself, Making money as a tattoo artist, my childhood dream job, and I couldn't be more happy. Now to the issue at hand. The other evening, my boyfriend brought up me buying a house and said that he would feel weird moving into a house with me if it was only mine, that he wants to be included in the whole process, including owning the home with me. He isn't currently working, he just got fired from his job, and when he was working, our income gap was quite large. That being said, he won't be able to contribute 50% of a down payment. I explained to him that this house isn't really for me, that this house is for my kids and their future, that my first home is going to be bought with the intent to have them living in it as young adults, and I'll be purchasing something else for myself when that time comes. It has nothing to do with him, and I can't risk the possibility that the house will be gone if he and I were to split up. I told him if he moved in that I wouldn't expect him to pay on my mortgage, but that he would help out by paying other bills. He didn't seem to like that idea and insisted he would want to pay 50-50. So, am I the jerk for not compromising and buying a house to keep only in my name, even if marriage was something I decided I wanted down the road? I don't want to take any chances on my kids having what I've always wanted to be able to give them. No, you're not the jerk. He's asking for a free ride. In the future, if he contributes, you can always reevaluate, but he's not been with you long enough to demand half your house and half your future. If it's too terrible for him, then he can just skip on down the road. OP. Honestly, even if he were able to contribute 50-50, I still don't want him included in owning this home. I told him I'm open to buying property and including him on any investments after this one, but that didn't seem to mean anything to him. I just want this one thing no one could ever take from me. I've seen too much divorce and messy breakups to not keep that in the back of my mind. I couldn't keep from getting emotional during the conversation because it means so much to me. After this, I'm definitely thinking about the relationship differently. I don't know, it's just I can't really relate to how he's feeling. I would never expect to be given something just because I'm with the person, not having put any work into making it happen. My mind just doesn't work that way. I worked in family law during law school, so I get what you're saying regarding divorce and breakups. You're fine with wanting your own place. My mind also works the same as you. You need to take care of you and your kids first. You've only been with him for 6 months, right? It shouldn't be an issue for him, and congrats on getting your dream job. Not the jerk. A jobless, financially insecure guy is upset he won't get to co-own a house with you. Red flag. If you're still with this jerk in 2 years, when you buy this house, you can reevaluate the situation. But he better be able to pay half of the down payment and the ongoing mortgage. If you ever decide to marry him, make sure you have a solid prenup. Not the jerk. Unless you're married, you never put a boyfriend or girlfriend's name on a home you're buying. You're totally right about that, and I'm glad you know how important this is. With that being said, I've seen several stories like this before where the roles were flipped and the responses are always the opposite. People tell the girlfriend to leave the boyfriend if he won't put her name on the house he's buying, and they tell her she deserves so much better. I know I'll get downvoted to heck for this, but I can't help but feel like it's a double standard often seen here on Reddit. A story like this wouldn't be complete without at least one idiot like you trying to point out my double standard. Let me spell this out for you since you're about as intelligent as a 5-year-old. When it comes to money, America, jobs, property, taxes, etc., y'all basically have it on easy mode. Why do you think the pay gap is still so huge even in 2023? If we can get something simple from a relationship, like being included on the house, it's only fair because of how hard it is for us in today's society. With men having life on easy mode, the least y'all could do is include us in purchases like homes. Don't like it? Stay a sad, lonely, single jerk for the rest of your life. Yowza, don't you sound pleasant. Am I the jerk for leaving my business to my protege instead of my kids? I, 58 male, have 2 kids, John, who's 32, and Susan, who's 29, and I started a business back in my late 20s after they were born. I've been growing it for the better part of 3 decades. However, my wife and I agreed that we have more than enough for me to retire, and so I am. Some backstory. Back when John was in high school, I gave him a job at my business, and soon after he started, he asked if I could give his friend, Sam, who's 32, now 17 when he started, a job as well. John was not interested in the work and quit after 4 months, and I will wholeheartedly admit that this was very painful at the time, but Sam loved the job. He continued to work throughout college, where he went into the same field as me, and I gave him a promotion when he completed his studies. Sam is very much my protege, and I see him as my second son. John studied finance and, after working at some other places, asked me if I could give him a job. I did, and he's extremely good at what he does. I love the fact that I get to work with the both of them. I took my wife, John, Susan, and Sam out to dinner last week to tell them my plan for retirement. Sam will take my place and own 60%, while John and Susan would each get 20%. I've never seen John so furious. He asked how I could choose Sam over him, my own flesh and blood. He also said he's the one who studied running businesses and that he should be the one in charge. I told him that he has only worked for me for a few years and already quit once, whereas Sam has been working for me for 15 years, knows all of the clients, the products, and the production team, and has their respect. He then asked if he had my respect, and I told him of course, he's the best at what he does, but that doesn't mean he's the best fit for being the boss. My wife and Susan tried de-escalating the situation, but John left in a huff and hasn't been talking to anyone but Susan since. I know John's hurt, but Sam is the better choice since he's been working directly under me for years and knows the ins and outs better than anyone but me. I've tried talking to John and apologizing, but he won't let me. Am I the jerk? Edit. Some people keep asking why I gave Susan the same amount and what her relationship to the business is. She's worked off and on as a contractor, and, especially since she has kids of her own, I wanted to give her some financial stability. It's the same with John, as he's never expressed any interest in running the place and came back to work for me because he got laid off and had a hard time finding another job. I wanted to ensure some financial stability for him while making sure Sam was the one in charge. Edit 2. First, a point of clarity. Nothing has actually been signed yet, and I'm still in charge. Susan came to the house, and we just had a long discussion. She's been talking with John, and she told me he feels like this is me telling John that Sam is my real son. I asked her if she felt the same way. She doesn't, but she sees how it looks to John. I then asked her what she thinks I should do, and she told me I should lower her share and give it to John. She said she would rather give him the money than watch him disappear from the family. I also asked if she knew whether he actually wanted and/or expected to run the business, and as far as she knew, he didn't and was surprised at how poorly he reacted. Before she left, I asked her to try and get him to have a conversation about this, and she told me, sure, but don't count on it being soon. Edit 3. I'm sick of the comments saying I don't care about my kids. My wife doesn't see it that way. My daughter doesn't see it that way. Yes, I wasn't always present in their lives, and yes, my business did take priority at times, but I did my absolute best to be there as much as I possibly could. I made time for graduations, sports events, and other big milestones and events as best I could, and I was there for most of them. I may not have been present at all times, but I did my best to try to be. Also, Sam is not a complete stranger. Not the jerk, but you lack emotional intelligence. It would be obvious to most people that this should be a conversation to have over a long period of time, individually with each of the three concerned parties. Announcing the completed decision was bound to set off some unpredictable feelings. Best solution as I see it would have been to sell the business at a below market value to the three of them in exactly the proportions you suggested, but only after individually explaining your plan to each of them and getting their feedback, starting with Susan because she's the one most removed from the business, but most likely to be able to predict her brother's reaction and tweaking the plan based on their input. But now you've created a rift between them, and it will be incredibly difficult for them to operate as partners. You'll have to talk to them again and find a way to show John that he's not second fiddle to your second son. I actually disagree with this, but I'm also team not the jerk. I don't think OP owed it to anyone to tweak his plan, even family. Maybe that's really cold and heartless of me to say, but writing that OP lacks emotional intelligence simply because this is not a choice that should be made based on emotions isn't the best read of the situation in my opinion. OP made his choice with his business, and it's the right one for his business, his life's work. His kids are cared for financially, they have stability, and OP's business has the best possible candidate taking over. That's fine. That's a really good solution, in fact, given that it's stated that his son never had a vested interest in running the business. Why would OP give his life's work to someone that's uninterested in sustaining it? OP's son shouldn't have assumed he would be the owner. That's really insane entitlement. Running a business requires more than a blood relation. His feelings are hurt and he didn't get what he wanted. But so what? He's an adult. This family has a lot of time for this to smooth over. I think OP made the best decision for everyone and isn't obligated to cater to the potential or material reactions of his kids when it comes to his decision. And he shouldn't need to sell his business below market value. Not catering to his kids' emotions doesn't mean he lacks emotional intelligence, and it doesn't mean that he should have done things differently. You're the jerk, because John did sacrifice more than Sam, and way more than Susan. Being the kid of an entrepreneur is hard. I know, I am one. The amount of sacrifices families make and the stress the family takes on when business is slow is immeasurable. And you gave Sam a significant controlling share of the business to boot. You just made a dangerous business decision. If John is a good businessman, he can still do over Sam and will likely go no contact with you. You're the jerk. Firstly, when John was working for you originally, he was in high school. At that age, many kids go against what their parents do or want. It's totally normal. So I'm not surprised he left. But he came back. He studied something that would add value to the business, and he came back and worked for you. Secondly, you're giving Susan, who did absolutely nothing for the business, equal share to John, who's been working for you and contributing to the business. How is that fair? Lastly, Sam may have worked for you for all these years and may know the ins and outs of the business. However, at no point did you ever have a conversation with John and Susan about leaving the business to Sam. So it would be a natural conclusion that you would be leaving this business that you've built up to your own kids. Is there any way you can leave the ownership of the business to John and Susan equally, but with a clause that Sam is to run it or be in charge of it for however long he wants? Something like that? If you had done this to me, I wouldn't be hurt. I'd be quitting the business and opening up a rival business and putting yours in the ground. Nor would I be speaking to you again. Not because you didn't leave the business to me, but because you announced this without even a discussion with me, blindsiding me. As far as you and John are concerned, I'm pretty certain a mere apology isn't going to cut it. My thoughts exactly. You're the jerk. John is working for the company and studied to do so. It goes against the idea that you're dividing it on merit. So obviously John is upset because you're saying Sam is worth way more than he is, while John is equal to someone who does not work at the company. That's gotta hurt. I thought the people on Reddit couldn't stand the idea of nepotism. The minions on Reddit can be pretty unpredictable. Best to not try to rationalize their thinking. You also probably don't want to be asking them for financial, business, or parental advice. That's not the kind of stuff they learn in Mummy's basement. I parked in a pregnant person's spot and all heck broke loose. I'm not sure how popular these are in other places, but in the southern US, some places have special parking spots for veterans and pregnant individuals, and sometimes they're the same spot. I'm currently about 34 weeks pregnant and have had kind of a rough pregnancy, so I avoid going out often. Yesterday, my husband couldn't go to the grocery store and I had to do it. The grocery store I went to had one of the aforementioned parking spots free, and I parked there. As I was getting out, a man pulled up behind me and started yelling at me, telling me it was illegal to park there. It's for veterans. I told him it was for veterans and pregnant women, and I was a pregnant woman. He said he earned the right to park there by fighting for our country. I apologized that he felt that way, and I was grateful for his service, but if he needs the spot for disability reasons, there are plenty of open spots. Some details. He was a young dude, and of course, I don't know if he was disabled or not. He was in his car, and I couldn't see him, as well as not all disabilities are visible. He called me a jerk and drove away, and when I told my husband about the interaction, he told me while it did say for pregnant women and veterans, he deserved it more, and I should have backed off. My dad and brother agree, and now I feel like a jerk. But my sister told me I was in the right and not to worry. Am I the jerk? Very small update. I told my husband it was very uncool of him to treat me like that, especially with him knowing how anxious I was to go to the store and him knowing for a fact it hurts to walk and that the spot was for both of us. We had a bit of back and forth, but he apologized. My dad also pretty much immediately apologized as well, saying he shouldn't have sided with the man who called his baby girl a jerk. But I think my mom and sister really laid into him. My brother is a jerk, so I don't expect an apology from him. Edit. I realize I worded my post weird. People have asked why I even engaged with him. We were in a parking lot that had one row of spots on either side. He pulled up behind my car, but where I needed to walk, so I would have had to walk past him, which I didn't feel safe doing. So I stayed near my car in case I needed to get back in. Edit. A couple people have asked my age. I'm 19. Yes, I'm married. Yes, I'm pregnant. It's a long and involved story. I didn't want to be married or a mom at 19. but life happens and we make the best of it. I'm just answering some questions. Not the jerk. It was meant for pregnant women and veterans. You were there first, so you can use it. Bad luck for this guy. Not the jerk. Parking spots for pregnant people are about need, not who deserves it more. You needed it. You were right to use it. Your husband sounds like he doesn't have a good idea about how challenging the third trimester is. You should suggest he read up on it because he's sounding like the jerk here. The veteran too, obviously. Am I the jerk for telling my brother and sister-in-law that my nephews don't owe her the ability to adopt them? My two nephews are 20 and 19 years old. Sister-in-law married my brother when the boys were 7 and 8. They lost their mom at 5 and 6. She had been sick for a couple of years, and my brother was back dating after 6 months. Sister-in-law was his third date, and they married after a few months of dating. Sister-in-law has always loved the boys. I remember her telling me before the wedding she hoped one day they might call her mom sometimes. She was also hoping she would be close to the boys' maternal family. My brother just has me and our other sister who lives overseas, and she has no family. So the maternal family were the only real extended family. The boys do not call her mom. They never have. Their maternal family are also not close to sister-in-law, or my brother for that matter, but they never really were close. Sister-in-law and my brother tried to have a baby for many years, and ultimately she had to come to terms with the reality that she was not going to have a biological kid. During those years of trying to have one, she didn't withdraw from the boys or anything, but she did tell me at one point she wanted to bring up to the boys that they could call her mom. I told her to let them come up with it on their own and to focus on just having a positive relationship. Sister-in-law went through early menopause a couple of years ago, which permanently ended any hope she would get pregnant someday. Last year, she and my brother set the boys down and expressed that she would love to adopt them if they were willing. The boys were not. I heard about this via the boys, who were not happy it was brought up. They felt it came out of nowhere and felt they had never given an indication they would want that. A month or two ago, the topic was brought up again, and then sister-in-law asked the boys if they loved her in any real, meaningful way, and whether there was something of a compromise that could happen where she be acknowledged as a mother to them. They said no to the adoption, no to calling her mom, and they ignored the topic of whether they loved her or not. She pleaded with them to reconsider and said she would be an amazing second mom, that she would be there for them like always and would keep pouring her love into their lives. When they didn't agree, it turned into an argument and the boys left. Sister-in-law cried her heart out after this. I saw her and my brother for the first time since the request came up a second time the other day. Sister-in-law was talking about how much it hurt her. She brought up the maternal family again, saying she could not understand why they wouldn't want to add to the family and couldn't welcome her into their family and hearts. Then she was saying how she really thought the boys would feel like she had earned the adoption. My brother called them kids and said that they could ask in a few years again, and hopefully they will have grown up. I said the boys did not owe her an adoption and gently suggested they figure out a way to come to terms with it not happening. My brother was furious, and sister-in-law looked as though I had betrayed her. Am I the jerk? Those boys aren't her kids. They're fully grown, legally recognized adults. They've made it crystal clear what they do and don't want regarding this subject. Your sister-in-law has had it rough, but honestly sounds more like she needs therapy to come to terms with what she can't have. All she's doing is permanently damaging any relationship she could have had with your nephews. And the maternal side of the family, they lost their daughter and had to watch as someone tried their hardest to take over their daughter's role, trying to effectively erase their daughter in the process. They're under no obligation to welcome her into that role. Not the jerk, you told her the truth. The same truth that your nephews have been trying to get through to her for years. Your sister-in-law desperately needs therapy. Projecting her grief about her own infertility onto her stepkids at this level is really not okay at all. And I say this as an infertile woman myself. I'll be shocked if they want a relationship with her at all after this. You're 100% correct, and your brother and sister-in-law have lost their minds trying to force this issue. Not the jerk. She's not their mother. They don't owe her anything. No jerks here. I don't see what crime sister-in-law did other than naively hoping and then being sad when life wasn't a fairy tale. She wasn't graceful in dealing with her pain of realizing the two kids she helped raise didn't have the same depth of feeling for her that she had for them. I feel like maybe folks could have a little sympathy for her in that regard. The boys are not to blame, and it doesn't sound like you were cruel. You mentioned that dad dated 6 months and married 2 years after mom's passing, but that doesn't sound unreasonable. If he was ready, why not? His sons don't owe him acceptance of his new spouse, and he doesn't owe them years as a widower. You don't mention any bad parenting other than this argument with the adult kids, so it seems like a sad and uncomfortable situation, but no real jerks. Maybe dad was ready to move on after 6 months, but his kids weren't. The problem with sister-in-law is her pushing the issue. She honestly should have never even brought up wanting them to call her mom. She should have waited to develop a place in their hearts organically and understood that she could never be their mom. Wanting to be the mom of kids when their mother has passed is incredibly selfish on her part. Then, after seeing that this is not the relationship they have with her, trying to push the issue of adoption, it sounds like the brother and his wife are the problem. They're not only delusional, but selfish because they aren't even thinking about how the kids felt. Also, her love seems a bit transactional, which is always a red flag in interpersonal relationships. Basically, I did this, so I expect this. She's not concerned over building a relationship where people actually love and care for each other genuinely. You're the jerk, and so are your nephews. My heart goes out to your sister-in-law. Your brother sounds like a good guy, and his kids are spoiled brats. I feel bad she wasted her life raising these little creeps who don't even love her. How ungrateful they sound. And all of you morons here on Reddit defending them, y'all are the ones who need therapy just like those boys do. I hope that woman can one day adopt kids who will love her since those boys are incapable of showing her the love she does deserve. My neighbor has been stealing my Wi-Fi for months. Gets exactly what she deserves. I, 23 female, live next door to Jenny. She lives with her husband and their kid. I work almost all day outside, and in my spare time, I play games on PS4 during the week. I pay for good internet because I like not having any lag while playing or any internet slowness. My PS4 is in my room and the internet router is in the living room, so it's Wi-Fi and not cable. And because of that, I constantly check the internet speed and it's always X amount. A few months ago, I invited Jenny's family over for dinner and gave them my Wi-Fi password. Apparently, theirs was weak at my house, and I went through politeness. Last month, I started to notice very bad internet speed, 1/10 of what it was before, and a few technical visits to resolve, until the technician asked if I had passed the password to someone in the building, and I put the pieces together. I then changed the password because the internet was crap, and I didn't want to share it with 3 more people. Last week, the neighbor knocked on my door and asked for my Wi-Fi password because her internet wasn't working, and I commented saying that I changed it because there were people on it from other apartments that were using it. She got the message and said she was having a hard time and couldn't pay for her own internet. So in desperation, she used mine, and if I couldn't give her the new password, promising that they would only use it at night when they got home from work. I denied, saying that night was my leisure time too, and that I didn't want to have bad internet, and I don't want to pay more for the internet to be good for 4 people. And even more so for her to be using it for a month without my permission. She stomped off and, oh goodness, my new image in the building is being the petty jerk who doesn't want to share Wi-Fi with people who are struggling financially. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Why should you have to pay the bills for her, especially when she was stealing it and making you suffer through trying to figure out what was wrong? And it's definitely not a one-time thing. They did it constantly, and I'm 100% sure it's not just for sending emails or something work-related. Must be streaming something or other stuff, and it's more than just 1 or 2 people using it to make OP's side so slow. 100% I agree. I live with my boyfriend, and we had another roommate. Boyfriend would game, I would send occasional work emails and did other remote work, and roommate would do nothing but, very loudly, stream movies when she came home. Internet would always be fine when it was just me occasionally checking emails and my boyfriend gaming. But the minute the roommate came home, the internet would practically stop working. My emails wouldn't even send at all, and games became completely unplayable. When the roommate moved out, we haven't had issues with the internet speed since. Am I the jerk for kicking my brother and his family out after his son stole my engagement ring? The reason I, 26 male, know is because I literally caught him in my room going through my things. And it's on camera. My nephew is 9 and he has a habit of stealing things. They've gotten in trouble a few times at stores because he'd leave with something in his pocket. But of course, because he's a kid, they usually just say he forgot he had it. Even at school, my brother has told me they've had to come talk to the principal on a couple of occasions. Doesn't seem like they've done anything to stop it. They had to come stay here with me because my brother lost his job and they weren't going to make it with all their bills, including rent. He's doing Uber right now while he searches for a job, and they can move out. I didn't want to because of my nephew specifically, but family is family, I guess. A month ago, I finally bought an engagement ring for my girlfriend that I was planning on proposing to soon, but now I don't know. It's a $4,000 ring that I spent over a year saving up for. It's been hidden in my room under one of the drawers. One time, when I found him snooping in my room, I told my brother to control his kid, then got one of those cheap spy cams in my room just in case. Then, last week, I noticed it was out of its box. After checking the camera, it showed he was in there again when I wasn't home. My brother and his wife have yelled at him. He says he left it by the TV in the guest room, but it's not there. They looked through all their stuff and his too. I know for a fact he's lying about not having it because that's the same thing he said about one of my watches he took, then ended up finding it. By the second day, my brother tells me that they can't find it at all. And I told him either they find the ring or he repays me the $4,000 I spent on it. If not, they can't stay here anymore. My brother got really upset. He told me I know how their situation is right now. And yeah, it's a tough spot, but I couldn't ignore the fact that his kid he can't parent took something extremely important to me that cost a lot of time and money. They were given a week to leave my house if they don't find the ring. They're having to stay at a cheap motel, but my brother won't stop begging to come back because what they're paying right now each night is coming directly out of their savings. He won't stop calling me heartless about letting something like this come between helping them out through a difficult time, and my nephew keeps saying he's sorry. It's just hard right now to want them around. Don't even know what to do about the ring, and every time I think about it, it just makes me so mad that it's hard to care about their situation. Does that make me a jerk? Not the jerk. They sold the ring. I think so too. At this point, why won't his nephew say where it went? The thing with kleptomaniacs is they often don't know what to do with the things they steal. They may have washed it down the sink, flushed it down the toilet, buried it in the garden, etc., just to hide it. It's not so much about having things, it's about taking them. It's highly unfortunate that he took something so important, and his parents definitely need to get him help and should have done so already, which could have prevented this. Okay, I want to make a couple of suggestions. The first is to use a metal detector in and around your house and yard. The second is, if his parents really haven't sold it, think about where you might hide something if you were a kid. Somewhere that seems like a permanent and safe hiding space, especially if he knew he was moving and wouldn't be able to take it on him. As a kid, I always felt like the backyard was a permanent space. Look under bricks that can be moved or in any trees. The third thing I was thinking, make a report with the police. If it's possible to scare him into talking, it will. If you and he need other resources, they may be able to point you in the right direction. His parents are responsible for him. You can't just let a year's worth of savings go. Even if they can't pay it back right away, they might say, but we're family, let it go. But equally, family wouldn't want you to lose a year's worth of your savings and to have had such a monumental milestone for you ruined. My sister demands I pay for her vacation, but she won't agree to babysit. My 32 male family is planning a vacation for this summer. Both my parents, my older brother, and my sister-in-law, my younger sister, Camila, who's 22, and my husband, my 2 kids, who are 10 and 8, and I are all planning to go. We're all planning to stay in a resort for 2 weeks. This will obviously be a bit expensive, at least $2,000 per person, and that is an enormous amount of money in my currency. Camila is in her last semester of university and will start a full-time job in August. Right now, she's not working and lives with my parents, not passing judgment on her for being unemployed because my brother and I went through the same at her age. Camila called me last week to ask if we could pay for her ticket and accommodation. My parents would pay for food and activities. My husband and I can comfortably afford our own family, but adding Camila would put financial pressure on us. I told her that I would discuss it with my husband and then I would call her. So my husband and I agreed that we would be willing to pay for her if she would babysit our kids on certain occasions. Of course, not every day and without notice, but at least twice a week for 2 hours for 2 months. She would basically be the replacement for our current babysitter. Anyway, I texted her basically saying what I just wrote, and she replied, "Absolutely not." So I called her to ask why she was so against this arrangement, which I think benefits both of us. She gets to go on vacation, and we have a babysitter we trust and don't spend more than our monthly budget. Camila said that we were manipulating her into doing unpaid labor for us and forcing her to say yes because neither our brother or parents could afford to pay for her. She also said that she's way too busy with her last semester of uni and finals. I told her that she could do all of her school stuff in our house. My kids are very well behaved and need very little supervision, but she still said that she wouldn't do it. So I then told her I was very sorry, but if she didn't accept, then we couldn't pay for her to go on vacation. So now she's incredibly mad at me. But now my mom is also angry with me because she wants to have a family vacation and she knows my husband and I do have the money to pay for Kamala and family helps family, which I agree with. But I believe that help must be reciprocal, and right now, Kamala is not reciprocating that help. My brother and dad just want to settle this down. They are not taking sides. Not the jerk. Unpaid labor? Did she miss the part where her pay was a $2,000 holiday? This is a win-win for both of you. In fact, she comes out slightly more on top from the whole deal. So, family helps family only when it comes to paying for expensive vacations, but not for childcare? Gotcha. Your sister is living on another planet. Not the jerk. Not the jerk at all. Your sister is a piece of work and spurning an incredibly generous offer. Her labor is far from unpaid. Looking at your arrangement, you're asking for approximately 35 hours of labor in return for a $2,000 trip. That's close to $60 an hour. That would be an amazing offer for a 22-year-old in the US, and I'm guessing from the my currency answer that you live in a lower cost of living country than the US, where the offer is even more generous. You're not the jerk at all. Your sister sucks. You're the jerk, especially your family. It's rude that nobody was thinking about her financial situation when planning this vacation. You and the family expected this problem to solve itself by some magical means, and now you act surprised. She's not entitled to your money, and it's also putting you in an uncomfortable place. Because of this, I think the offer's reasonable, but it's forced, leaving her with little choice, and I can see why she's annoyed. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my gender reveal cupcakes? I, female 22, found out last week my baby's gender, and it's a girl. My family are excited, and I decided to do a small gender reveal over the Easter weekend. I had this planned for Saturday, so a few days before, I asked a small local business if she could please make 12 cupcakes with pink and blue icing on top and pink icing in the middle. She agreed and said they would be ready to collect Friday evening. The plan was to pick up the cupcakes on Friday, invite friends and family over Saturday, and give some guests a cupcake which would reveal the gender. I only invited a few guests as my apartment is fairly small, and I didn't want to do a large gender reveal anyway, just something cute and fun. Plus, everyone loves cupcakes. So Friday evening came. The small business owner, Claire, gave me her address to collect the cakes from her, said that they would cost 25 pounds and they're ready to collect whenever. I drove to her apartment and knocked on the door. She greeted me there with a box of cupcakes and they looked amazing. They were exactly how I'd imagined them and I thanked her for them. She gave me the box, but just as she did, her large pet dog came running up to me, barking and jumped at me, knocking the box of cupcakes all over the floor. Claire apologized and shut the dog inside. He was still barking and jumping at the door. She said it's because he gets excited when people come and visit, but he wouldn't have hurt me as he's friendly. At this point, I didn't know the damage to the cupcakes as the box landed upside down. I picked it up and the cakes were ruined. The icing had smashed all over the box and some cakes had spilled out onto the ground. Claire looked horrified as I understand she spent a few hours making them for me. She apologized and said she could remake them for free, but they wouldn't be ready until Sunday. I said, unfortunately, I'm expecting my guests tomorrow and Sunday's no good, as I already had other plans. I explained I wouldn't be paying for these cupcakes as they were inedible and ruined by her dog. We agreed payment upon receiving the goods, and since I never received them, I wouldn't be paying. She said that I should still pay, as she had to buy ingredients for the cakes, and the cost of eggs has gone up, meaning she would be out of pocket. I said if she had control of her dog, then they wouldn't have been dropped, and I'm sorry, but again, I wouldn't be paying. I got in my car and left without the cupcakes. I still had guests attend on Saturday. I announced the gender in person rather than with some cupcakes, but it was still nice spending time with friends and family. My family were all happy, but my sister-in-law said I should have still paid for the cupcakes as she accepted it was her fault and offered to remake them for me. I personally don't think I should have had to pay for them, but now I'm feeling slightly guilty as I understand it's a small business and a loss of profit would affect her a lot harder than a larger business. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Why on earth would you need to pay for something you didn't receive? I know it would be nice to help out Claire a little bit if you guys were friends, but if this is just some lady, then no. Not the jerk. She's a business owner. She needs to act professional. Having a wild, uncontrollable dog jumping all over your customers and knocking your product out of their hands as they're trying to pick it up is not acting like a professional. This has nothing to do with the cost of eggs. She knows her dog doesn't behave and therefore should crate it or lock it in another room when she's meeting customers. No way should you pay a dime for those cupcakes you couldn't use. If she could have remade them for you that day and delivered them to your house, sure, but you had no use for them a week later. Her fault, so she eats the cost. You're not the jerk in this situation, but baby gender reveals are endlessly useless and stupid. Just have a baby shower. Why do you care so much about other people's decisions if they have no effect on you? If people want to have gender reveal parties, then there's nothing wrong with gender reveal parties, and you shouldn't be demanding other people adopt your lifestyle. Not the jerk, and I'm still trying to figure out why this gender reveal garbage is necessary. No one really cares except the mom, dad, and maybe the grandparents. Maybe. You're the jerk. Just because your baby is born looking a certain way does not mean you will know their gender. It's 2023 and you people still don't realize this. It honestly just makes me sad that you think you can decide whether they will be male or female. It's not up to you and it never was. You remind me so much of my parents. Don't be surprised when they grow up and go no contact with you. My wife keeps pressuring me to copy stuff that she sees on TikTok. I'm 29, male. My wife, who's 28, and I have been together for about 10 years, married for 2. And while not the most affectionate person in public, I am quite affectionate at home when it's just us. Lots of hugs and kisses, you name it. Both our love languages is quality time and physical touch, courtesy of her research. In the past few months, she's joined the TikTok Reels and wants to copy things she sees people do and ask their significant other in Reels or in movies, like when guys lift your chin or when a girl asks something to her spouse or boyfriend. So we'll be eating dinner and I'll be on my phone or working on my laptop, and there will be something in a video she sends me or on a show or movie we're watching, and she'll comment on it as it relates to us or want me to do something to her. So this morning she was watching a reel in bed, and it was a man running his hand through his partner's hair. She asked me to do it, and I said no. I might have been a little frustrated because I was running late for work and asked her, "Why are you acting like this? We're not in a movie. Do I ask you to do this kind of silly stuff?" I could tell it made her upset and she didn't press it again, and I didn't think anything of it until later when she wasn't texting me like she usually does during the day. I text her asking her what she wants for dinner, and she says she doesn't care. Then she says that she still heard about this morning about how I was a jerk to her and invalidated how she felt. Am I the jerk for telling her that this isn't a movie and asking her why she was behaving like this? We hug and kiss all the time, so I feel like she's copying stuff just to get a reaction from me. Edit. Bought my wife a cupcake and her favorite tea and went home after work. She arrived half an hour after me and pouted at me when she saw my peace offerings. We hugged and I apologized for being a jerk this morning. She apologized for making me feel uncomfortable. I asked her if she wanted me to do things like that to her, and she said sometimes, but she admitted that she sometimes missed the butterflies when we first dated. Surprise, I didn't connect the dots that one of our friends just got into a new relationship and has been over the moon about all their cute moments. So I asked her to tell me all of the TikTok things she's watched that she likes, and she shyly showed me all of the ones she bookmarked. So yeah, gonna make the lady happy and sprinkle her weeks with some, and we'll take into account how to keep our life spicy. I love her, and for all you folks trying to hit on her, she's taken. Get out of here. Thanks to all the folks who were kind enough to explain my mistakes and TikTok stuff to me, the good and the bad. She's asking you to show her love, dude. Who cares where she's getting the ideas? Why aren't you interested in listening to what your wife wants from you? You're the jerk. Your wife is telling you how you can delight her, and you're getting grumpy about it? You're the jerk. You're the jerk. She knows she isn't in a movie, she just wants affection. If it made you uncomfortable to do any of her suggestions, that would be a different story. But is it really too much to ask you to tilt her chin up and kiss her? Or do the wall thing? It would make her happy. Why not do it? It might be a little silly, but isn't that what relationships are for? Who else is she supposed to go to for recreating cute stuff she sees in movies? It just seems like so little effort on your part that would make her very happy. Not the jerk. Look, bud, as a man, you shouldn't be allowing that TikTok crap in your house in the first place. It gives everyone unrealistic expectations and turns them delusional, feeling as if their own life and relationships are inadequate. Social media messes people up, and causes them to have totally unrealistic expectations. Imagine if you saw the women on TikTok doing God knows what and asked your wife to do it too. Do you think all of these losers would be cheering you on and saying she's in the wrong for not doing what the TikTokers do? I swear, most of the posts on this subreddit make me lose faith in humanity, seeing how lost people are these days. You're not the jerk, but get ready for a divorce. You'll never be able to compete with the stuff she sees on social media, and she'll end up leaving you over it like they always do. Why can't we afford to go to Paris? Why can't you buy me a new BMW? Why don't you look like Fabio? Problem is, they can't love us unconditionally the way that we love them. It's just part of being a guy these days, mostly due to the masses being brainwashed by social media. Back when I was in high school and college in the 70s, you'd have a hard time finding a guy who didn't have a girlfriend. These days, all 3 of my sons can't get a girlfriend to save their life. It's not that young guys are different now. Heck, my sons look much better than I ever did, and they make more money. The problem is that social media has created unrealistic expectations, hence the higher than ever before number of single mothers out there. The same ones who reject decent guys like my sons who actually want to settle down and start families. Instead, they choose the jerks who will knock them up, bail on them, and move on to the next one. Edit. Call me whatever names you want. It just shows you don't have a real argument and have to resort to name calling. I was married for 30 years until I lost my wife to cancer. She was the most amazing person I ever knew. 100% my fault. I messed around and found out. It's Good Friday, just a few days ago, and I'm the normal closing manager. It was busy. We close at 11, but everyone's getting ready for the holiday and it clears out early. Almost. There's one table left, clearly a first date. I've walked past several times and caught snippets of their conversation. Seem like nice folks. It's 11:15 and I get their server to fill up their water glasses and then he can head home. The closing bartender has already packed up and is heading out too. Just me left, the dishwasher, and the couple. Dishwasher finishes up around midnight, sweeps the line, takes out the trash, and heads home. Just me and them. Meh, I'll leave them be for a while. It's an hour after close, but they're still chatting. I'll go to the office and do the nightly paperwork. I left the doors unlocked, the lights are still set low, the music is still on, but they're completely by themselves. I finish up the paperwork and it's now 1 in the morning. I walk out to lock up and I'm really surprised that they're still there. I figured somebody would go to the bathroom and notice that absolutely nobody in this 55-table establishment was in the building with them. Oh well, I'm off Saturday. Let's see what happens. I've got Reddit I need to catch up on. At 1:55, I decide that's enough. I walk up to the table with my keys in my hand, and before I can say anything, the guy asks me if he can get another drink from the bar. I stammer for a second, completely off guard. Before I can collect myself, the guy says he forgot to order some to-go food and needs to put in an order. So I laughed. Didn't really know what else to do. Hey lady, I shouldn't have laughed at your date. I'm sorry, but I laughed at him. I said, I'm sorry, my man, but we closed 3 hours ago. There's nobody here but you and me, and I'm about to head home. And he came back with, you haven't been closed for 3 hours? And he scoffed. I honestly didn't think real-life people scoffed. But I said, well, you're kinda right. Looked at the lady and said, we've been closed for 2 hours and 57 minutes. And like I said, I'm about to lock the doors, so that means you gotta come with me. And then I stood at their table with my keys in my hand until they got up, and we all walked outside together. I will always remember a couple I had when I was bartending at this nice steakhouse. We were a little slow, so I let the server go home and took tables. Only people left in the bar. Drinks are almost empty, so I drop the check. Guy, what time do you guys close? Me, 10. Guy, but it's 10:45. Me, yes, I wanted to give you time to finish your drinks. But you can't leave until we do, right? That's right. Oh, good. We'll have another bottle of wine. Luckily in my state, there's a limited amount of time I can serve you after we close to the public, so I use that excuse. But seriously, dude? Would I be the jerk if I asked my husband to stop coming home for lunch? I do in-home daycare, and my husband gets an hour lunch each day from work. He comes home for lunch and watches shows on his phone. The problem is, without fail, he wakes up our daughter or another daycare kid every day. Or prevents them from falling asleep to begin with, and I don't ever get a break. He used to just slam the door open and shut, would stomp around in his steel-toe boots. Daycare is in our unfinished basement/playroom. I've set boundaries about the door and the shoes. Our dogs bark upon his arrival, so we've worked to kennel them when he arrives or letting them out. Sometimes I'm tending to a kid though and can't get the dog situated before he shows up. He tends to forget to text he's on his way also. Currently, he shuts cupboards, drawers, and the microwave door loudly, cracks open a can of pop, etc., just to list a few ways he wakes up our kid. The main issue is he comes home right as nap time starts, and he wakes her up just as she's falling asleep, or 20 minutes after she's fallen asleep, and then she starts screaming and refuses to take a nap. This is an everyday occurrence, not to mention the daycare kids that he wakes up. I feel so burnt out, full of rage and contempt when he does this. Sometimes he works through lunch, and genuinely nobody wakes up or makes a peep. He goes out of town for work almost monthly, and nap times go seamlessly. I've been telling him for months I wish he would pack a lunch and just spend his lunch at work because it's taking a toll on my mental health to not get a break. Childcare is hard, and my day begins at 6:30 a.m. every single day. If someone doesn't nap, that means I don't get a break and I work 11 hours straight. He thinks I'm blowing it out of proportion and being dramatic about how often it happens, but it's literally the truth. I've tried to set boundaries, but he watches his shows while he walks around making lunch and doesn't pay attention or realize how loud he is. He often drops things like his utility knife because he doesn't pay attention as well. Would I be the jerk if I straight up told him he can't have lunch here anymore? I've asked him before to pack a lunch at work, or he could eat next door at his parents' house with his mom who works from home. I just don't see the compromise because he wakes them up and I'm left to deal with it, and I don't get a chance to even eat or check my phone some days. Edit to clarify, his lunch doesn't start at a specific time each day. It's whenever he finishes his last job. Our rest time is from 12:30 to 2:30. Most kids don't fall asleep until about 1 though. Edit 2. Husband and I talked last night. I told him if he can come home by 12, there won't be any complaints as long as he prepares his lunch beforehand to eliminate excessive noise getting ingredients, etc. But he decided to start packing a frozen lunch and eating at work. Thank you for all of your help. We've been battling this for 8 months now, and we just add a layer of resentment that we don't need on top of being parents to an almost 2-year-old. Hoping this compromise works better, I appreciate all of you. Would you be the jerk if you told him he can't have lunch at home anymore? No, he sounds very inconsiderate, not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your home is a place of work where you operate a business. His presence there interrupts with your ability to provide your services. I'm sure he wouldn't like it if you showed up at his job during his work time and made a ruckus watching Netflix. I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate it either. You're the jerk. You tried hard to villainize him, but in reality, it sounds like he's just making normal at-home noise in his home. Maybe your place is on the small side for a daycare. You can ask him to try not to wake up the kids, but in my opinion, that's it. You're the jerk. If his presence and the sounds that result from him being in the house are enough to derail this so easily, it's really not his problem but your own. If you're in the business of childcare, then you need to either be on at all times or hire staff to give you a break like any other functioning business. Am I the jerk for going to my brother's bachelor party? I, 28 male, have a girlfriend who's 22, Nyla, and we've been dating for close to a year at this point. We had a great relationship leading up to this point, and now I'm just in shock of the position that we're in. Nyla and I recently found out she was pregnant. It was shocking to say the least because we weren't actively trying, because me and her were under the impression that she will never be able to naturally conceive. She told me that when she was younger, she went through some stuff, and as a result of that, the doctor told her that she would probably never be able to have a kid of her own without medical intervention. So this was somewhat of a miracle baby, and we were both fully prepared to have this baby until she unfortunately lost it. It was really horrible to say the least. She fell into a depression, and I was sad too. 2 weeks later, I had a trip planned for my brother's bachelor's party. This was planned way before we even found out she was pregnant. She told me how she didn't want me to go and that she still needs me, but I wasn't sure what she wanted me to do if I stayed. I told her I'll be back in 3 days, and she seemed fine with that answer because she gave me the go-ahead. The day I was leaving, she asked me, "Are you seriously actually going to go?" And I told her I had to since the ticket and hotel is non-refundable, so I did end up going. The whole trip, I barely heard from her, and I tried calling her, and she just ignored me. I came home from the trip to our apartment, and all of her stuff was gone, and she took my dog and dropped him off over at my parents' house. I went to my mom's house and picked up my dog, and she told me my girlfriend dropped the dog off because she couldn't watch it and she needed space from me. I told my mom what happened, and she told me I was an idiot and a jerk for what I did. I don't believe what I did was wrong by going on this trip she told me I could go on. I tried calling her to sort this out because I love her, and I've just been ignored so far. Am I the jerk? You don't have to be a mind reader to know she didn't want you to go. She told you. You ignored her and told her you were going. When you were leaving, she told you again. You ignored her and went anyway. It's not surprising she left you. You're the jerk. You left to go on a fun trip shortly after she had gone through a physically and emotionally horrible experience. Where, in that sentence, do you feel like you did the right thing? You're the jerk. You're the jerk, especially for not having a more detailed conversation about this. She asked you to stay, and you weren't sure what she wanted you to do if you stayed? How about talk to her about this before you just decide to go? Let's see. Controlling girlfriend gone? Check. Unplanned baby that you never even wanted to have with the controlling girlfriend gone? Check. Got your dog back and had a good time in Vegas celebrating something that was meaningful to you? Check. Sounds to me like you came out on top, bro. Find someone who doesn't bring all that baggage into your life, and never again trust someone who tells you that they can't get pregnant. They are always lying, as we all find out eventually. Can't even tell you how many girlfriends have tried to pull that "I can't get pregnant" crap with me, and next thing you know, guess who's pregnant? They're just trying to trap you, bro. Either that, or trying to get child support. You want to call my manager? Okay, call him. This happened over a year ago at Walmart. For some context, on my days off, I have a blue work shirt I wear wherever I go out that has pins and patches all over it, as sort of a battle vest if you will. This fact means that more than once I've been mistaken as a Walmart employee, which I normally just brush off, but this dude took it to another level. So I go to Walmart to drop my car off for an oil change. I decide that I'll walk through the store since it was hot out, then across the parking lot to a fast food joint for lunch. As I'm walking down one of the aisles, I hear a grumpy, "Sir," from the other side of the pallet of products. I just sort of ignore it and keep walking. A quick look at me should tell you that I don't work here. But this guy walked around the pallets and gets right in front of me, all the while yelling, "Sir," at me. I stop because he's now right in front of me and pop out one of my earbuds, to which this guy starts to go off on me. "Are you going to help a customer or just ignore me? You shouldn't have your hat or headphones on at work," he yells. I just roll my eyes and say, "That was rude, but no, I will not help you." I then gestured at my lack of Walmart name badge and all the pins and patches on my shirt, trying to imply that I don't work here. "Well, I want to speak to your manager. You shouldn't treat customers like this." I started to pull out and scroll through my contact till I found my manager. Mind you, my manager at the time was a grumpy old man from Tennessee who would take zero crap from anyone. Had this guy called my manager, he'd have had it handed to him. "You want to speak to my manager? Okay, but he's going to tell you the same thing I'm about to tell you. Buzz off. Don't yell at anyone like that." Dude is now getting more angry as I show him my manager's number. "Go ahead, call him. Tell him I didn't help you out. I don't work here and it's my day off. You shouldn't be treating people like this." The guy just mumbled something, then pushed past me and walked away, having never called my manager. The next time I was at work, I told my manager this story and he got a laugh out of it, saying that he would have loved it if that guy had called him. My stepdaughter feels entitled to my lottery winnings. I, 35 female, am engaged to my fiance, Brian, 37 male. We've been together for 2 years. He has a daughter, Ashley, who's 14, from a previous relationship. I'm currently pregnant with our daughter. I like to play the lottery sometimes, usually just scratch tickets. This time I won $50,000. Of course, I was very excited. I decided to take the money and put it away for my baby's future. I told Brian about the money and that it was being put away for our baby's future. He said we should take some of the money for Ashley since she's going to be graduating high school in a few years. Brian and his ex do have a college fund set up for Ashley, but not enough for all of it. I let him know this money would be used for our child since it was won by me and I'd be the one paying taxes on it since we're not married yet. I let him know once the baby was born, it would go into a trust that no one had access to. Brian and Ashley think I'm being ridiculous since the unborn baby would have more money than her set aside already and that it's unfair. I explained I understood how they felt, but I think I'm doing the right thing. Now my mother-in-law is also pressuring me because Ashley went to her house feeling upset, saying the baby is getting preferred treatment already. Am I the jerk? Edit. I see a lot of people asking how Ashley knows about the money. She walked into the house while we were talking about it and overheard our conversation. We didn't hear her come inside. Ashley then thought this meant we won the money, as in her father and I, since we're engaged. Not the jerk. Get a prenup. Run. Do not marry that man. Ask Brian if his ex will be contributing to your daughter's college fund. Everyone sucks here. You could throw your soon-to-be stepdaughter a few grand. I'm sure it would go a long way for your relationship with her. Your baby isn't here yet, and properly vested, that money is going to grow substantially by the time your unborn needs it. They suck for demanding your money. As someone with a step-parent, my answer entirely depends on if you want Ashley to be your kid when you get married. If you and Ashley are distant and haven't been making an effort to get closer, then it's entirely reasonable to spend all of this money on your next kid. Is there any way you hold off on making any permanent decision about the money, even just for a year or so? Also, I will not suggest you need to give away any money to Ashley now or that it has to be anywhere near 50%. In my personal opinion, everyone sucks here, because while they shouldn't be expecting this money, I also think 12 is an age where it's acceptable to meet a new adult and have them become like a third parent to you. And if you put all of the money towards your next kid, you will end any future close relationship with Ashley. There will be no future where she asks you to go wedding dress shopping with her, be at her graduation, be in the hospital when she gives birth, or where she'll make Instagram posts on Mother's Day about the 2 awesome mothers I have. Do you want to not only marry the man you love, but to marry into his family and make his kid your own? I had to scroll way too far down to see this answer. Ashley is still a kid, and OP is expecting to become an important person in her life. It's fine for her to prioritize her own kid with her own money, especially as her and Brian's finances are still separate, and Ashley still has 2 parents who can help her financially. But setting aside some of the money for Ashley is a signal that OP cares about her. If I were Brian, I'd be concerned if the person I was about to marry was so dismissive of my existing kid's needs. That said, the fact that he, his ex, and his mother are all pressuring OP rather than Brian having a sensitive conversation with OP about it is also a massive red flag. It would be smart and kind for OP to set aside some of the money for Ashley, not in the college fund her parents set up, but maybe in a long-term savings account that OP has access to. That way she doesn't lose control of the money and can take it back if OP and Brian break up, but it's still signaling that she cares about Ashley. Given the way this conversation has gone though, I don't think this relationship is going to last. Financial advice and parenting advice, the 2 things you should definitely not be asking these kids on Reddit about. Neighbors turn their house into a very loud public church service every Sunday, and their son is a creep. So we just had new neighbors move into the house next to ours, and they've been extremely annoying. Firstly, they convert their front garage and driveway into a church every Sunday. They line up chairs and invite people over and preach loudly on a podium. It literally lasts all day with catering in the works. When they're not doing this, they're loudly practicing their preach sermons in the garage throughout the week. Look, I have no issues with religious folk in general, but it's just so loud and annoying, to be honest. Like, can't they just go to a normal church instead of converting their house into one? Is this even legal to do so? Why subject your neighbors to this? Second, the family has a son, probably in his 20s, who harasses both me, female 25, and my older sister. He stares at us very creepily and stops us literally every time he sees us outside. He asks us really weird questions, trying to hit on us, I guess. He once chased my car as I was pulling out of the driveway to ask me what day it was. Recently, as I pulled up into the driveway, he stood behind my car on my property, staring at me and literally waiting for me to get out so he could speak to me. I was stuck in my car for literally 5 to 10 minutes to wait for him to leave, and he waited the whole time. I just got out, made eye contact with him while ignoring what he said, and stormed inside. Like, it's really getting in the way of my life. Now, I usually run from my car to my front door and the other way around so as to not be spoken to or stared at creepily. What really set me off recently was that I caught him staring at me through my window from a distance. Now I have to keep my curtains and blinds closed permanently, which is not the greatest thing for my mental health. This entire situation is making my anxiety spike so high, I really shouldn't feel unsafe in my own property. Other than all of this, there haven't been any other confrontations or issues with the family in general. It seems like they're really extroverted and have made attempts to get to know us, but I'm afraid if I accuse their son of this stuff, They'll deny it since they're children of God, or whatever religious folks say, or retaliate. I've daydreamed of blasting music from my car during their sermon, but I don't want to start drama. Any thoughts or advice? Set up cameras to catch anything just in case. They're fairly cheap, and you should document the creepiness in case it's needed for later. Call the city or the cops about the Sunday thing. I'm sure they are not zoned for church services, so it is a legitimate complaint. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.